Volume 5. 14. Your needs are met. Arise, O soul, and gird thee up anew, though the black camel death kneel at this gate, no beggar thou that thou for alms shouldst sue, be the proud captain still of thine own fate. Kenyon. You've heard the story of the old man who called his children to his bedside to give them a few parting words of advice. And this was the burden of it. My children, he said, I have had a great deal of trouble in my life, a great deal of trouble, but most of it never happened. We are all of us like that old man. Our troubles weigh us down, in prospect, but we usually find that when the actual need arrives, Providence has devised some way of meeting it. Dr. Jacques Loeb, a member of the Rockefeller Institute, conducted a series of tests with parasites found on plants, which show that even the lowest order of creatures have the power to call upon universal supply for the resources to meet any unusual need. In order to obtain the material, reads the report of the tests, potted rose bushes are brought into a room and placed in front of a closed window. If the plants are allowed to dry out, the aphids, parasites, previously wingless, change to winged insects. After the metamorphosis, the animals leave the plants, fly to the window and then creep upward on the glass. It is evident that these tiny insects found that the plants on which they had been thriving were dead, and that they could therefore secure nothing more to eat and drink from this source. The only method by which they could save themselves from starvation was to grow temporary wings and fly, which they did. In short, when their source of sustenance was shut off and they had to find the means of migrating or perish, universal supply furnished the means for migration. If universal mind can thus provide for the meanest of its creatures, is it not logical to suppose that it will do even more for us, the highest product of creation, if we will but call upon it, if we will but have a little faith? Viewed in the light of mind's response to the need of those tiny parasites, does it seem so unbelievable that a sea should roll back while a people marched across it dry-shod? That a pillar of fire should lead them through the wilderness by night? That manna should fall from heaven, or water gush forth from a rock? In moments of great peril, in times of extremity, when the brave soul has staked its all, those are the times when miracles are wrought, if we will but have faith. That doesn't mean that you should rest supinely at your base and let the Lord provide. When you have done all that is in you to do, when you have given of your best, don't worry or fret as to the outcome. Know that if more is needed, your need will be met. You can sit back with the confident assurance that having done your part, you can depend upon the genie of your mind to do the rest. When the little state of Palestine was in danger of being overrun by Egypt on the one hand, or gobbled up by Assyria on the other, its people were frantically trying to decide which horn of the dilemma to embrace, with which enemy they should ally themselves to stave off the other. With neither, the prophet Isaiah told them, in calmly resting your safety lieth, in quiet trust shall be your strength. So it is with most of the great calamities that afflict us. If we would only calmly rest, quietly trust, how much better off we should be. But no, we must fret and worry, and 9 times out of 10 do the wrong thing. And the more we worry and fret, the more likely we are to go wrong. All of universal mind that is necessary to solve any given problem, to meet any need, is wherever that need may be. Supply is always where you are and what you need. It matters not whether it be sickness or trouble, poverty or danger, the remedy is there, waiting for your call. Go at your difficulty boldly, knowing that you have infinite resources behind you, and you will find these forces closing around you and coming to your aid. It's like an author writing a book. For a long time he works in a kind of mental fog, but let him persevere, and there flashes suddenly a light that clarifies his ideas and shows him the way to shape them logically. At the moment of despair, you feel a source of unknown energy arising in your soul. That doesn't mean that you will never have difficulties. Difficulties are good for you. They are the exercise of your mind. You are the stronger for having overcome them. But look upon them as mere exercise. As stunts that are given you in order that you may the better learn how to use your mind, how to draw upon universal supply. Like Jacob wrestling with the angel, don't let them go until they have blessed you, until, in other words, you have learned something from having encountered them. Remember this, no matter how great a catastrophe may befall mankind, no matter how general the loss, you and yours can be free from it. There is always a way of safety. There is always an ark by which the understanding few can be saved from the flood. The name of that ark is understanding, understanding of your inner powers. When the children of Israel were being led into the promised land, and Joshua had given them their directions, they answered him, All that thou commandest us we will do, and whithersoever thou sendest us, we will go, only the Lord thy God be with thee, as he was with Moses. They came to the river Jordan, and it seemed an insurmountable barrier in their path, but Joshua commanded them to take the Ark of the Covenant, representing God's understanding with them, before them into the Jordan. They did it, and the waters which came down from above stood and rose up upon an heap, and the priests that bear the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the midst of Jordan, and all the Israelites passed over on dry ground, until all the people were passed clean over Jordan. The Ark of the Covenant. All through the Old Testament, when war and pestilence, fire and flood, were the common lot of mankind, there is constant assurance of safety for those who have this understanding, this covenant with the Lord. Because thou hast made the Lord which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation, there shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. For he shall give his angels charge over thee to keep thee in all thy ways. That is his agreement with us, an agreement which gives us the superiority to circumstances which men have sought from time immemorial. All that is necessary on our side of the agreement is for us to remember the infinite powers that reside within us, to remember that our mind is part of universal mind and as such it can foresee, it can guard against and it can protect us from harm of any kind. We need not run away from trials or try to become stoical towards them. All we need is to bring our understanding to bear upon them, to know that no situation has ever yet arisen with which universal mind, and through it our own mind, was not fully competent to deal. To know that the right solution of every problem is in universal mind. That we have but to seek that solution and our trial is overcome. But where shall wisdom be found? And where is the place of understanding? Acquaint now thyself with God, and be at peace. If evil threatens us, if failure, sickness or accident seems imminent, we have only to decide that these evils do not come from universal mind, therefore they are unreal and have no power over us. They are simply the absence of the right condition which universal mind knows. Refuse, therefore, to see them, to acknowledge them, and seek through mind for the right condition which shall nullify them. If you will do this, you will find that you can appropriate from mind whatever you require for your needs, when you require it. The greater your need, the more surely it will be met, if you can but realize this truth. Fear not, little flock, said Jesus, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Remember that your thought is all-powerful. That it is creative. That there is no limitation upon it of time or space. And that it is ever available. Forget your worries. Forget your fears. In place of them, visualize the conditions you would like to see. Realize their availability. Declare to yourself that you already have all these things that you desire, that your needs have been met. Say to yourself, how thankful I am that mind has made all these good things available to me. I have everything that heart could desire to be grateful for. Every time you do this, you are impressing the thought upon your subconscious mind. And the moment you can convince your subconscious mind of the truth of it, that moment your mind will proceed to make it true. This is the way to put into practice the Master's advice, believe that ye receive it, and ye shall have it. There is no condition so hopeless, no cause so far gone, that this truth will not save it. Time and again patients given over by their doctors as doomed have made miraculous recoveries through the faith of some loved one. I hope that everyone who reads this book may gain as much from their first reading as I did, writes a happy subscriber from New York City. I got such a clear understanding from that one reading that I was able to break the mental chain holding a friend to a hospital bed, and she left the hospital in 3 days, to the very great astonishment of the doctors handling the case. In the same way, there are innumerable instances where threatened calamity has been warded off and good come instead. The great trouble with most of us is, we do not believe. We insist upon looking for trouble. We feel that the rainy day is bound to come, and we do our utmost to make it a surety by keeping it in our thoughts, preparing for it, fearing it. Cowards die many times before their deaths, the valiant never taste of death but once. We cross our bridges a dozen times before we come to them. We doubt ourselves, we doubt our ability, we doubt everyone and everything around us. And our doubts sap our energy, kill our enthusiasm, rob us of success. We are like the old lady who enjoys poor health. We always place that little word "but" after our wishes and desires, feeling deep down that there are some things too good to be true. We think there is a power apart from good which can withhold blessings that should be ours. We doubt, because we cannot see the way by which our desires can be fulfilled. We put a limit upon the good that can come to us. Prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, cried the prophet Malachi, if I will not open you the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing that there shall not be room enough to receive it. And all nations shall call you blessed, for ye shall be a delightsome land. Your mind is part of universal mind. And universal mind has all supply. You are entitled to, and you can have, just as much of that supply as you are able to appropriate. To expect less is to get less, for it dwarfs your power of receiving. It doesn't matter what your longings may be, provided they are right longings. If your little son has his heart set on a train and you feel perfectly able to get him a train, you are not going to hand him a picture book instead. It may be that the picture book would have greater educational value, but the love you have for your son is going to make you try to satisfy his longings as long as those longings are not harmful ones. In the same way, universal mind will satisfy your longings, no matter how trivial they may seem, as long as they are not harmful ones. Delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. If we would only try to realize that God is not some far-off deity, not some stern judge, but the beneficent force that we recognize as nature, the life principle that makes the flowers bud, and the plants grow, that spreads abundance about us with lavish hand. If we could realize that he is the universal mind that holds all supply, that will give us the toy of our childhood or the needs of maturity, that all we need to obtain from him our heart's desire is a right understanding of his availability, then we would lose all our fears, all our worries, all our sense of limitation. For universal mind is an infinite, unlimited source of good. Not only the source of general good, but the specific good things you desire of life. To it there is no big or little problem. The removal of mountains is no more difficult than the feeding of a sparrow. And to one, like the Master, with a perfect understanding, the miracle of raising Lazarus from the dead required no more effort than the turning of the water into wine. He knew that universal mind is all power, and there cannot be more than all. He knew that to know God aright is life eternal. And Jesus knew God aright, so was able to demonstrate this knowledge of life eternal in overcoming sin, disease, and death. For it is one and the same law that heals sin, sickness, poverty, heartaches, or death itself. That law is the right understanding of divine principle. But what does this ability to perform miracles consist of? What is the power or force by which we can prove this ability? Perhaps the simplest way is to begin with the realization that universal mind is man's working power. The science of thought. Can you stretch your mind a bit and try to comprehend this wonderful fact, that the all-powerful, all-knowing, everlasting Creator and Governor of the infinite universe, who hath measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, and meted out heaven with the span, and comprehended the dust of the earth in a measure, and weighed the mountains in scales, and the hills in a balance, is your working power. In proportion as we understand this fact, and make use of it, in that same proportion are we able to perform our miracles. Your work is inspired to the extent that you realize the presence of universal mind in your work. When you rely entirely on your own conscious mind, your work suffers accordingly. I can of mine own self do nothing, for the works which the Father hath given me to finish, the same works that I do bear witness of me. The miracles of Jesus bear witness of the complete recognition of God the Father as his working power. And mind you, this inspiration, this working of universal mind with you, is available for all of your undertakings. Mind could not show itself in one part of your life and withhold itself from another, since it is all in all. Every rightly directed task, no matter how insignificant or menial it may appear to you, carries with it the inspiration of universal mind, since by the very nature of omnipotence, its love and bestowals must be universal and impartial, and whatsoever ye do, do it heartily as to the Lord. Too many of us are like the maiden in the old Eastern legend. A genie sent her into a field of grain, promising her a rare gift if she would pick for him the largest and ripest ear she could find. His gift to be in proportion to the size and perfection of the ear. But he made this condition: she must pluck but one ear, and she must walk straight through the field without stopping, going back or wandering hither and thither. Joyously she started. As she walked through the grain, she saw many large ears, many perfect ones. She passed them by in scorn, thinking to find an extra-large, super-perfect one farther along. Presently, however, the soil became less fertile, the ears small and sparse. She couldn't pick one of these. Would now that she had been content with an ordinary-sized ear farther back. But it was too late for that. Surely they would grow better again farther on. She walked on, and always they became worse, till presently she found herself at the end of the field, empty-handed as when she set out. So it is with life. Every day has its worthwhile rewards for work well done. Every day offers its chance for happiness. But those rewards seem so small, those chances so petty, compared with the big things we see ahead. So we pass them by, never recognizing that the great position we look forward to, the shining prize we see in the distance, is just the sum of all the little tasks, the heaped-up result of all the little prizes that we must win as we go along. You are not commanded to pick out certain occupations as being more entitled to the Lord's consideration than others, but whatsoever ye do, whether it be in the exalted and idealistic realms of poetry, music, and art, whether in the cause of religion or philanthropy, whether in government, in business, in science, or simply in household cares, whatsoever ye do, you are entitled to, and have all of inspiration at your beck and call. If you seem to have less than all, it is because you do not utilize your gift. Now he that planteth and he that watereth are one, and every man shall receive his own reward according to his own labor. For we are laborers together with God. All things are yours, and ye are Christ's, and Christ's is God's. How shall you take advantage of this universal supply? When next any need confronts you, when next you are in difficulties, close your eyes for a moment and realize that universal mind knows how that need can best be met, knows the solution of your difficulties. And that your subconscious mind, being part of the universal mind, can know this, too. So put your problem up to your subconscious mind with the sublime confidence that it will find the solution. Then forget it for a while. When the time comes, the need will be met. Dr. Wynne Bigler corroborates the working out of this idea in the following. Suggestions lodged in the mind can effect a complete change, morally and physically. If mankind would become in spirit, as a little child, trusting in God implicitly, the greatest power would be utilized in the establishment of health and equilibrium, and the results would be untold in comfort, sanity, and blessing. For instance, here is one who is suffering from worry, fear, and the vexations of life. How can he get rid of these things and relieve this suffering? Let him go to a quiet room or place, twice a day, lie down and relax every muscle, assume complete indifference to those things which worry him and the functions of the body, and quietly accept what God, through this law of demand and supply, can give. In a few days he will find a great change in his feelings, and the sufferings will pass away and life will look bright and promising. Infinite wisdom has established that law, and its utilization by those who are worried and fearful will secure amazing results in a short time. The real reason for the change is found in the possibility of recovery by using the laws that God has placed within our reach, and thus securing the coveted health and power for all that we want and ought to do. The subliminal life is the connecting link between man and God, and by obeying his laws, one's life is put in contact with infinite resources and all that God is able and willing to give. Here is the secret of all the cures of disease, and the foundation for the possibility of a joyful existence, happiness, and eternal life. Suggestion is the method of securing what God gives, and the mind is the agent through which these gifts are received. This is not a matter of theory, but a fact. If anyone who is sick or who desires to be kept well will have stated periods of relaxation, open-mindedness, and faith, he can prove the beneficial and unvarying result of this method. 15. The master of your fate. A craven hung along the battle's edge, and thought, had I a sword of keener steel that blue blade that the king's son bears, but this blunt thing. And lowering crept away and left the field. Then came the king's son, wounded, sore bestead and weaponless, and saw the broken sword, and ran and snatched it, and with battle shout lifted afresh he hewed his enemy down, and saved a great cause that heroic day. Edward Rowland Sill. Where will you be at 65? 5 men in 6 at the age of 65 are living on charity. Just 1 in 20 is able to live without working at 65. That is what the American Bankers Association found when it took 100 healthy men at 25 and traced them to 65. These 100 were healthy to start with. They all had the same chance for success. The difference lay in the way they used their minds. 95 out of 100 just do the tasks that are set them. They have no faith in themselves, no initiative, none of the courage that starts things. They are always directed or controlled by someone else. At 65, where will you be? Dependent or independent? Struggling for a living, accepting charity from someone else, or at the top of the heap? I am the master of my fate. Until you have learned that, you will never attain life's full success. Your fate is in your own hands. You have the making of it. What you are going to be 6 months or a year from now depends upon what you think today. So make your choice now. Are you going to bow down to matter as the only power? Are you going to look upon your environment as something that has been wished upon you and for which you are in no way responsible? Or are you going to try to realize in your daily life that matter is merely an aggregation of protons and electrons subject entirely to the control of mind, that your environment, your success, your happiness, are all of your own making, and that if you are not satisfied with conditions as they are, you have but to visualize them as you would have them be in order to change them? The former is the easier way right now, the easy way that leads to the hell of poverty and fear and old age. But the latter is the way that brings you to your heart's desire. And merely because this power of universal mind is invisible, is that any reason to doubt it? The greatest powers of nature are invisible. Love is invisible, but what greater power is there in life? Joy is invisible, happiness, peace, contentment. The radio is invisible, yet you hear it. It is a product of the law governing sound waves. Law is invisible, yet you see the manifestation of different laws every day. To run a locomotive, you study the law of applying power, and you apply that law when you make the locomotive go. These things are not the result of invention. The law has existed from the beginning. It merely waited for men to learn how to apply it. If men had known how to call upon universal mind to the right extent, he could have applied the law of sound waves, the law of steam, ages ago. Invention is merely a revelation and an unfoldment of universal wisdom. That same universal wisdom knows millions of other laws of which man has not even a glimmering. You can call upon it. You can use that wisdom as your own. By thinking of things as they might be instead of as they are, you will eventually find some great need. And to find a need is the first step towards finding the supply to satisfy that need. You've got to know what you are after, before you can send the genie of your mind seeking of it in universal mind. The acre of diamonds. You remember the story of the poor Boer farmer who struggled for years to glean a livelihood out of his rocky soil, only to give it up in despair and go off to seek his fortune elsewhere. Years later, coming back to his old farm, he found it swarming with machinery and life, more wealth being dug out of it every day than he had ever dreamed existed. It was the great Kimberley diamond mine. Most of us are like that poor Boer farmer. We struggle along under our surface power, never dreaming of the giant power that could be ours if we would but dig a little deeper, rouse that great inner self who can give us more even than any acre of diamonds. As Orison Swett Martin put it, the majority of failures in life are simply the victims of their mental defeats. Their conviction that they cannot succeed as others do robs them of that vigor and determination which self-confidence imparts, and they don't even half try to succeed. There is no philosophy by which a man can do a thing when he thinks he can't. The reason why millions of men are plodding along in mediocrity today, many of them barely making a living, when they have the ability to do something infinitely bigger, is because they lack confidence in themselves. They don't believe they can do the bigger thing that would lift them out of their rut of mediocrity and poverty. They are not winners mentally. The way always opens for the determined soul, the men of faith and courage. It is the victorious mental attitude, the consciousness of power, the sense of mastership, that does the big things in this world. If you haven't this attitude, if you lack self-confidence, begin now to cultivate it. A highly magnetized piece of steel will attract and lift a piece of unmagnetized steel 10 times its own weight. Demagnetize that same piece of steel and it will be powerless to attract or lift even a feather's weight. Now, my friends, there is the same difference between the man who is highly magnetized by a sublime faith in himself, and the man who is demagnetized by his lack of faith, his doubts, his fears, that there is between the magnetized and the demagnetized pieces of steel. If two men of equal ability, one magnetized by a divine self-confidence, the other demagnetized by fear and doubt, are given similar tasks, one will succeed and the other will fail. The self-confidence of the one multiplies his powers 100-fold, the lack of it subtracts 100-fold from the power of the other. Have you ever thought how much of your time is spent in choosing what you shall do, which task you will try, which way you shall go? Every day is a day of decision. We are constantly at crossroads, in our business dealings, our social relations, in our homes, there is always the necessity of a choice. How important then that we have faith in ourselves and in that infinite intelligence within. Commit thy works unto the Lord, and thy thoughts shall be established. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. In this ever-changing material age, with seemingly complex forces all about us, we sometimes cry out that we are driven by force of circumstances. Yet the fact remains that we do those things which we choose to do. For even though we may not wish to go a certain way, we allow ourselves to pursue it because it offers the least resistance. To every man there openeth a way, and ways, and a way. And the high soul climbs the high way, and the low soul gropes the low, and in between, on the misty flats, the rest drift to and fro. But to every man there openeth a high way and a low, and every man decideth the way his soul shall go. John Oxenham. Now, how about you? Are you taking active control of your own thought? Are you imaging upon your subconscious mind only such things as you want to see realized? Are you thinking healthy thoughts, happy thoughts, successful thoughts? The difference between the successful man and the unsuccessful one is not so much a matter of training or equipment. It is not a question of opportunity or luck. It is just in the way they each of them look at things. The successful man sees an opportunity, seizes upon it, and moves upward another rung on the ladder of success. It never occurs to him that he may fail. He sees only the opportunity, he visions what he can do with it, and all the forces within and without him combine to help him win. The unsuccessful man sees the same opportunity, he wishes that he could take advantage of it, but he is fearful that his ability or his money or his credit may not be equal to the task. He is like a timid bather, putting in one foot and then drawing it swiftly back again, and while he hesitates some bolder spirit dashes in and beats him to the goal. Nearly every man can look back, and not so far back either with most of us, and say, if I had taken that chance, I would be much better off now. You will never need to say it again, once you realize that the future is entirely within your own control. It is not subject to the whims of fortune or the capriciousness of luck. There is but one universal mind, and that mind contains naught but good. In it are no images of evil. From it comes no lack of supply. Its ideas are as numberless as the grains of sand on the seashore. And those ideas comprise all wealth, all power, all happiness. You have only to image vividly enough on your subconscious mind the thing you wish, to draw from universal mind the necessary ideas to bring it into being. You have only to keep in mind the experiences you wish to meet, in order to control your own future. When Frank A. Vanderlip, former president of the National City Bank, was a struggling youngster, he asked a successful friend what one thing he would urge a young man to do who was anxious to make his way in the world. Look as though you have already succeeded, his friend told him. Shakespeare expresses the same thought in another way: assume a virtue if you have it not. Look the part. Dress the part. Act the part. Be successful in your own thought first. It won't be long before you will be successful before the world as well. David V. Bush, in his book, Applied Psychology and Scientific Living, says, Man is like the wireless operator. Man is subject to miscellaneous wrong thought currents if his mind is not in tune with the infinite, or if he is not keyed up to higher vibrations than those of negation. A man who thinks courageous thoughts sends these courageous thought waves through the universal ether until they lodge in the consciousness of someone who is tuned to the same courageous key. Think a strong thought, a courageous thought, a prosperity thought, and these thoughts will be received by someone who is strong, courageous, and prosperous. It is just as easy to think in terms of abundance as to think in terms of poverty. If we think poverty thoughts, we become the sending and receiving stations for poverty thoughts. We send out a poverty mental wireless and it reaches the consciousness of some poverty-stricken receiver. We get what we think. It is just as easy to think in terms of abundance, opulence, and prosperity as it is to think in terms of lack, limitation, and poverty. If a man will raise his rate of vibration by faith currents or hope currents, these vibrations go through the universal mind and lodge in the consciousness of people who are keyed to the same tune. Whatever you think is sometime, somewhere, received by a person who is tuned to your thought key. If a man is out of work and he thinks thoughts of success, prosperity, harmony, position, and growth, just as surely as his thoughts are things, as Shakespeare says, someone will receive his vibrations of success, prosperity, harmony, position, and growth. If we are going to be timid, selfish, penurious, and picayunish in our thinking, these thought waves which we have started in the universal ether will go forth until they come to a mental receiving station of the same caliber. Birds of a feather flock together, and minds of like thinking are attracted one to the other. If you need money, all you have to do is to send up your vibrations to a strong, courageous receiving station, and someone who can meet your needs will be attracted to you or you to him. When you learn that you are entitled to win, in any right undertaking in which you may be engaged, you will win. When you learn that you have a right to a legitimate dominion over your own affairs, you will have dominion over them. The promise is that we can do all things through the mind that was in Christ. Universal mind plays no favorites. No one human being has any more power than any other. It is simply that few of us use the power that is in our hands. The great men of the world are in no wise super beings. They are ordinary creatures like you and me, who have stumbled upon the way of drawing upon their subconscious mind, and threw it upon the universal mind. Speaking of Henry Ford's phenomenal success, his friend Thomas A. Edison said of him, he draws upon his subconscious mind. The secret of being what you have it in you to be is simply this: decide now what it is you want of life, exactly what you wish your future to be. Plan it out in detail. Vision it from start to finish. See yourself as you are now, being those things you have always wanted to do. Make them real in your mind's eye, feel them, live them, believe them, especially at the moment of going to sleep, when it is easiest to reach your subconscious mind, and you will soon be seeing them in real life. It matters not whether you are young or old, rich or poor. The time to begin is now. It is never too late. Remember those lines of Appleton's. I knew his face the moment that he passed triumphant in the thoughtless, cruel throng. I gently touched his arm, he smiled at me, he was the man that once I meant to be. Where I had failed, he'd won from life, success. Where I had stumbled, with sure feet he stood, alike, yet unalike. We faced the world, and through the stress he found that life was good. And I. The bitter wormwood in the glass, the shadowed way along which failures pass. Yet as I saw him thus, joy came to me, he was the man that once I meant to be. We did not speak. But in his sapient eyes I saw the spirit that had urged him on, the courage that had held him through the fight had once been mine. I thought, can it be gone? He felt that unasked question, felt it so his pale lips formed the one-word answer, no. Too late to win. No. Not too late for me, he is the man that still I mean to be. 16. Unappropriated millions. Somebody said that it couldn't be done, but he with a chuckle replied that, maybe it couldn't, but he would be one who wouldn't say so till he'd tried. So he buckled right in with the trace of a grin on his face. If he worried he hid it. He started to sing as he tackled the thing that couldn't be done, and he did it. Edgar A. Guest. The main difference between the mind of today and that of our great-great-grandfathers was that in their day conditions were comparatively static, whereas today they are dynamic. Civilization ran along for centuries with comparatively little change. Most people lived and died in the places where they were born. They followed their fathers' avocations. Seldom, indeed, did one of them break out of the class into which he had been born. Almost as seldom did they even think of trying to. No wonder, then, that civilization made little progress. Today we are in the presence of continual change. Men are imbued with that divine unrest which is never satisfied with conditions as they are, which is always striving for improvement. And thought is the vital force behind all this change. Your ability to think is your connecting link with universal mind that enables you to draw upon it for inspiration, for energy, for power. Mind is the energy in static form. Thought is the energy in dynamic form. And because life is dynamic, not static, because it is ever moving forward, not standing still, your success or failure depends entirely upon the quality of your thought. For thought is creative energy. It brings into being the things that you think. Think the things you would see manifested, see them, believe them, and you can leave it to your subconscious mind to bring them into being. Your mind is a marvelous storage battery of power on which you can draw for whatever things you need to make your life what you would have it be. It has within it all power, all resource, all energy, but you are the one that must use it. All that power is static unless you make it dynamic. In the moment of creative thinking, your conscious mind becomes a creator, it partakes of the power of universal mind. And there is nothing static about one who shares that all power. The resistless life energy within him pushes him on to new growth, new aspirations. Just as the sap flowing through the branches of the trees pushes off the old dead leaves to make way for the new life, just so you must push away the old dead thoughts of poverty and lack and disease, before you can bring on the new life of health and happiness and unlimited supply. This life is in all of us, constantly struggling for an outlet. Repress it, and you die. Doctors will tell you that the only reason people grow old is because their systems get clogged. The tiny pores in your arteries get stopped up. You don't throw off the old. You don't struggle hard enough, and the result is you fall an easy victim to failure and sickness and death. Remember the story of Sinbad the sailor, and the old man of the sea. The old man's weight was as nothing when Sinbad first took him on his shoulders, but he clung there, slowly but surely sapping Sinbad's strength, and he would finally have killed him as he had killed so many others if Sinbad, by calling to his aid all his mental as well as his physical resources, had not succeeded in shaking him off. Most of us have some old man of the sea riding us, and because he clings tightly and refuses to be easily shaken off, we let him stay there, sapping our energies, using up our vitality, when to rid us of him it is only necessary to call to our aid all our resources, mental as well as physical, for one supreme effort. When a storm arises, the hardy mariner doesn't turn off steam and drift helplessly before the wind. That might be the easy way, but that way danger lies. He turns on more steam and fights against the gale. And so should you. There is a something within you that thrives on difficulties. You prize that more which costs an effort to win. You need to blaze new trails, to encounter unusual hardships, in order to reach your hidden mental resources, just as the athlete needs to exert himself to the utmost to reach his second wind. Have you ever seen a turtle thrown on its back? For a while it threshes around wildly, reaching for something outside to take hold of that shall put it on its feet. Just as we humans always look for help outside ourselves first. But presently he draws all his forces within his shell, rests a bit to regain his strength, and then throws his whole force to one side, legs, head, tail, and all, and over he goes. So it is with us. When we realize that the power to meet any emergency is within ourselves, when we stop looking outside for help and intelligently call upon mind in our need, we shall find that we are tapping infinite resource. We shall find that we have but to center all those resources on the one thing we want most, to get anything from life that it has. As Emerson put it, when we once find the way to get in touch with universal mind, we are owner of the sphere, of the 7 stars and the solar year, of Caesar's hand and Plato's brain, of the Lord Christ's heart and Shakespeare's strain. 17. The secret of power. The great were once as you. They whom men magnify today once groped and blundered on life's way were fearful of themselves, and thought by magic was men's greatness wrought. They feared to try what they could do, yet fame hath crowned with her success the selfsame gifts that you possess. Edgar A. Guest. There is a woman in one of the big eastern cities whose husband died a year or two ago and left her nearly $100 million. She has unlimited power in her hands, yet she uses none of it. She has unlimited wealth, yet she gets no more from it than if it were in the thousands instead of millions. She knows nothing of her power, of her wealth. She is insane. You have just as great power in your hands, without this poor woman's excuse for not using it. You have access to unlimited ideas, unlimited energy, unlimited wealth. The open sesame is through your subconscious mind. So long as you limit yourself to superficial conditions, so long as you are a mere hewer of wood or carrier of water for those around you who do use their minds, you are in no better position than the beasts of burden. The secret of power is in understanding the infinite resources of your own mind. When you begin to realize that the power to do anything, to be anything, to have anything, is within yourself, then and then only will you take your proper place in the world. As Bruce Barton has it in The Men Whom Nobody Knows. Somewhere, at some unforgettable hour, the daring filled his, Jesus, heart. He knew that he was bigger than Nazareth. Again, in speaking of Abraham Lincoln, Barton says, inside himself he felt his power, but where and when would opportunity come? And later in the book, but to every man of vision the clear voice speaks. Nothing splendid has ever been achieved except by those who dared believe that something inside them was superior to circumstance. No doubt Jesus' friends and neighbors all ridiculed the idea of any such power within him. Just as most people today laugh at the thought of a power such as that within themselves. So they go on with their daily grind, with the gaunt specters of sickness and need ever by their side, until death comes as a welcome relief. Are you going to be one of those? Or will you listen to that inner consciousness of power and find the kingdom of heaven that is within you? For whatever you become conscious of, will be quickly brought forth into tangible form. Don't judge your ability by what you have done in the past. Your work heretofore has been done with the help of your conscious mind alone. Add to that the infinite knowledge at the disposal of your subconscious mind, and what you have done is as nothing to what you will do in the future. For knowledge does not apply itself. It is merely so much static energy. You must convert it into dynamic energy by the power of your thought. The difference between the $25 a week clerk and the $25,000 a year executive is solely one of thought. The clerk may have more brains than the executive, frequently has an actual weight of gray matter. He may even have a far better education. But he doesn't know how to apply his thought to get the greatest good from it. If you have brains, use them. If you have skill, apply it. The world must profit by it, and therefore you. We all have inspired moments when we see clearly how we may do great things, how we may accomplish wonderful undertakings. But we do not believe in them enough to make them come true. An imagination which begins and ends in daydreaming is weakening to character. Make the daydreams come true. Make them so clear and distinct that they impress themselves upon your subconscious mind. There's nothing wrong with daydreaming, except that most of us stop there. We don't try to make the dreams come true. The great inventor, Tesla, dreams every new machine complete and perfect in every particular before ever he begins his model for it. Mozart dreamed each of his wonderful symphonies complete before ever he put a note on paper. But they didn't stop with the dreaming. They visualized those dreams, and then brought them into actuality. We lose our capacity to have visions if we do not take steps to realize them. Power implies service, so concentrate all your thought on making your visions of great deeds come true. Thinking is the current that runs the dynamo of power. To connect up this current so that you can draw upon universal supply through your subconscious mind, is to become a superman. Do this, and you will have found the key to the solution of every problem of life. 18. This one thing I do. How do you tackle your work each day? Do you grapple the task that comes your way with a confident, easy mind? Do you start to toil with a sense of dread or feel that you're going to do it? You can do as much as you think you can, but you'll never accomplish more. If you're afraid of yourself, young man, there's little for you in store. For failure comes from the inside first. It's there, if we only knew it, and you can win, though you face the worst, if you feel that you're going to do it. Edgar A. Guest. How did the Salvation Army get so much favorable publicity out of the war? They were a comparatively small part of the services that catered to the boys over there, yet they carried off the lion's share of the glory. Do you know how they did it? By concentrating on just one thing, donuts. They served donuts to the boys, and they did it well. And that is the basis of all success in business, to focus on one thing and do that thing well. Better far to do one thing preeminently well than to dabble in 40. 2,000 years ago, Porcius Marcus Cato became convinced, from a visit to the rich and flourishing city of Carthage, that Rome had in her a rival who must be destroyed. His countrymen laughed at him. He was practically alone in his belief. But he persisted. He concentrated all his thought, all his faculties, to that one end. At the end of every speech, at the end of every talk, he centered his hearer's thought on what he was trying to put over by epitomizing his whole idea in a single sentence: Carthage must be destroyed. And Carthage was destroyed. If one man's concentration on a single idea could destroy a great nation, what can you not do when you apply that same principle to the building of a business? I remember when I was first learning horsemanship, my instructor impressed this fact upon me: remember that a horse is an animal of one idea. You can teach him only one thing at a time. Looking back, I'd say the only thing wrong with his instruction was that he took in too little territory. He need not have confined himself to the horse. Most humans are the same way. In fact, you can put all humans into that class if you want a thing done well. For you cannot divide your thought and do justice to any one of the different subjects you are thinking of. You've got to do one thing at a time. The greatest success rule I know in business, the one that should be printed over every man's desk, is, this one thing I do. Take one piece of work at a time. Concentrate on it to the exclusion of all else. Then finish it. Don't half do it, and leave it around to clutter up your desk and interfere with the next job. Dispose of it completely. Pass it along wherever it is to go. Be through with it and forget it. Then your mind will be clear to consider the next matter. The man who is perpetually hesitating which of two things he will do first, says William Wirt, will do neither. The man who resolves, but suffers his resolution to be changed by the first counter-suggestion of a friend, who fluctuates from plan to plan and veers like a weathercock to every point of the compass with every breath of caprice that blows, can never accomplish anything real or useful. It is only the man who first consults wisely, then resolves firmly, and then executes his purpose with inflexible perseverance, undismayed by those petty difficulties that daunt a weaker spirit, that can advance to eminence in any line. Everything in the world, even a great business, can be resolved into atoms. And the basic principles behind the biggest business will be found to be the same as those behind the successful running of the corner newsstand. The whole practice of commerce is founded upon them. Any men can learn them, but only the alert and energetic can apply them. The trouble with most men is that they think they have done all that is required of them when they have earned their salary. Why, that's only the beginning. Up to that point, you are working for someone else. From then on, you begin to work for yourself. Remember, you must give to get. And it is when you give that extra bit of time and attention and thought to your work that you begin to stand out above the crowd around you. Norval Hawkins, for many years general manager of sales for the Ford Motor Company, wrote that, the greatest hunt in the Ford business right now is the man hunt. And big men in every industrial line echo his words. When it comes to a job that needs real ability, they are not looking for relatives or friends or men with pull. They want a man, and they will pay any price for the right man. Not only that, but they always have a weather eye open for promising material. And the thing they value most of all is initiative. But don't try to improve the whole works at once. Concentrate on one thing at a time. Pick some one department or some one process or some one thing and focus all your thought upon it. Bring to bear upon it the limitless resources of your subconscious mind. Then prepare a definite plan for the development of that department or the improvement of that process. Verify your facts carefully to make sure they are workable. Then, and not till then, present your plan. In Thoughts on Business, you read, men often think of a position as being just about so big and no bigger, when, as a matter of fact, a position is often what one makes it. A man was making about $1,500 a year out of a certain position and thought he was doing all that could be done to advance the business. The employer thought otherwise, and gave the place to another man who soon made the position worth $8,000 a year, at exactly the same commission. The difference was in the men, in other words, in what the two men thought about the work. One had a little conception of what the work should be, and the other had a big conception of it. One thought little thoughts, and the other thought big thoughts. The standards of two men may differ, not especially because one is naturally more capable than the other, but because one is familiar with big things and the other is not. The time was when the former worked in a smaller scope himself, but when he saw a wider view of what his work might be, he rose to the occasion and became a bigger man. It is just as easy to think of a mountain as to think of a hill, when you turn your mind to contemplate it. The mind is like a rubber band, you can stretch it to fit almost anything, but it draws into a smaller scope when you let go. Make it your business to know what is the best that might be in your line of work, and stretch your mind to conceive it, and then devise some way to attain it. Big things are only little things put together. I was greatly impressed with this fact one morning as I stood watching the workmen erecting the steel framework for a tall office building. A shrill whistle rang out as a signal, a man over at the engine pulled a lever, a chain from the derrick was lowered, and the whistle rang out again. A man stooped down and fastened the chain around the tenter of a steel beam, stepped back and blew the whistle once more. Again the lever was moved at the engine, and the steel beam soared into the air up to the 16th story, where it was made fast by little bolts. The entire structure, great as it was, towering far above all the neighboring buildings, was made up of pieces of steel and stone and wood, put together according to a plan. The plan was first imagined, then penciled, then carefully drawn, and then followed by the workmen. It was all a combination of little things. It is encouraging to think of this when you are confronted by a big task. Remember that it is only a group of little tasks, any of which you can easily do. It is ignorance of this fact that makes men afraid to try. One of the most essential requisites in the accomplishment of any important work is patience. Not the patience that sits and folds its hands and waits, Macabre-like, for something to turn up. But the patience that never jeopardizes or upsets a plan by forcing it too soon. The man who possesses that kind of patience can always find plenty to do in the meantime. Make your plan, then wait for the opportune moment to submit it. You'd be surprised to know how carefully big men go over suggestions from subordinates which show the least promise. One of the signs of a really big man, is his eagerness to learn from everyone and anything. There is none of that know-it-all about him that characterized the German general who was given a book containing the strategy by which Napoleon had for 15 years kept all the armies of Europe at bay. "I've no time read about bygone battles," he growled, thrusting the book away. "I have my own campaign to plan." There is priceless wisdom to be found in books. As Carlyle put it, all that mankind has done, thought, gained or been, it is lying in matchless preservation in the pages of books. The truths which mankind has been laboriously learning through countless ages, and who knows what price of sweat and toil and starvation and blood, all are yours for the effort of reading them. And in business, knowledge was never so priceless or so easily acquired. Books and magazines are filled with the hows and whys, the rights and wrongs of buying and selling, of manufacturing and shipping, of finance and management. They are within the reach of anyone with the desire to know. Nothing pays better interest than judicious reading. The man who invests in more knowledge of his business than he needs to hold his job is acquiring capital with which to get a better job. As old Gorgon Graham puts it in The Letters of a Self-Made Merchant to His Son, "I ain't one of those who believe that a half knowledge of a subject is useless, but it has been my experience that when a fellow has that half knowledge, he finds it's the other half which would really come in handy. What you know is a club for yourself, and what you don't know is a meat axe for the other fellow. That is why you want to be on the lookout all the time for information about the business and to nail a fact just as a sensible man nails a mosquito, the first time it settles near him." The demands made upon men in business today are far greater than in any previous generation. To meet them, you've got to use your talents to the utmost. You've got to find in every situation that confronts you, the best, the easiest and the quickest way of working it out. And the first essential in doing this is to plan your work ahead. You'd be surprised at how much more work you can get through by carefully planning it, and then taking each bit in order and disposing of it before starting on the next. Another thing, once started at work, don't let down. Keep on going until it is time to quit. You know how much power it takes to start an auto that is standing motionless. But when you get it going, you can run along in high at a fraction of the expenditure of gas. It is the same way with your mind. We are all mentally lazy. We hate to start using our minds. Once started, though, it is easy to keep along on high, if only we won't let down. For the moment we let down, we have that starting to do all over again. You can accomplish 10 times as much, with far less effort or fatigue, if you will keep right on steadily instead of starting and stopping again. Volumes have been written about personal efficiency, and general efficiency, and every other kind of efficiency in business. But boiled down, it all comes to this. 1. Know what you want. 2. Analyze the thing you've got to do to get it. 3. Plan your work ahead. 4. Do one thing at a time. 5. Finish that one thing and send it on its way before starting the next. 6. Once started, keep going. And when you come to some problem that stumps you, give your subconscious mind a chance. Frederick Pierce, in Our Unconscious Mind, gives an excellent method for solving business problems through the aid of the subconscious. Several years ago, I heard a successful executive tell a group of young men how he did his work, and included in the talk was the advice to prepare at the close of each day's business a list of the 10 most important things for the next day. To this I would add, run them over in the mind just before going to sleep, not thoughtfully, or with elaboration of detail, but with the sure knowledge that the deeper centers of the mind are capable of viewing them constructively even though conscious attention is surrendered in sleep. Then, if there is a particular problem which seems difficult of solution, review its features lightly as a last game for the imaginative unconscious to play it during the night. Do not be discouraged if no immediate results are apparent. Remember that fiction, poetry, musical composition, inventions, innumerable ideas, spring from the unconscious, often in forms that give evidence of the highest constructive elaboration. Give your unconscious a chance. Give it the material, and stimulate it with keenly dwelt on wishes along frank ego maximation lines. It is a habit which, if persisted in, will sooner or later present you with some very valuable ideas when you least expect them. I remember reading of another man, a genius at certain kinds of work, who, whenever an especially difficult problem confronted him, slept on it. He had learned the trick as a child. Unable to learn his lessons one evening, he had kept repeating the words to himself until he dozed in his chair, the book still in his hands. What was his surprise, on being awakened by his father a few minutes later to find that he knew them perfectly. He tried it again and again on succeeding evenings, and almost invariably it worked. Now, whenever a problem comes up that he cannot solve, he simply stretches out on a lounge in his office, thoroughly relaxes, and lets his subconscious mind solve the problem. Volume 6. 19. The Mastermind. One who never turned his back but marched breast forward, never doubted clouds would break, never dreamed though right were worsted wrong would triumph, held we fall to rise, are baffled to fight better, sleep to wake. Browning. Among your friends there is one of those men who doesn't have much use for the word can't. You marvel at his capacity for work. You'll admire him the more the longer you know him. You'll always respect him. For he not only has made good, but he always will make good. He has found and appropriated to himself the talisman of Napoleon, absolute confidence in himself. The world loves a leader. All over the world, in every walk of life, people are eagerly seeking for someone to follow. They want someone else to do their thinking for them, they need someone to hearten them to action, they like to have someone else on whom to lay the blame when things go wrong, they want someone big enough to share the glory with them when success crowns his efforts. But to instill confidence in them, that leader must have utter confidence in himself. A Roosevelt or a Mussolini who did not believe in himself would be inconceivable. It is that which makes men invincible, the consciousness of their own power. They put no limit upon their own capacities, therefore they have no limit. For universal mind sees all, knows all, and can do all, and we share in this absolute power to the exact extent to which we permit ourselves. Our mental attitude is the magnet that attracts from universal mind everything we may need to bring our desires into being. We make that magnet strong or weak as we have confidence in or doubt of our abilities. We draw to ourselves unlimited power or limit ourselves to humble positions according to our own beliefs. A long time ago Emerson wrote, "There is one mind common to all individual men. Every man is an inlet to the same and to all of the same." He that is once admitted to the right of reason is made a freeman of the whole estate. What Plato has thought, he may think; what a saint has felt, he may feel; what at any time has befallen any man, he can understand. Who hath access to this universal mind, is a party to all that is or can be done, for this is the only and sovereign agent. The great German physicist, Nernst, found that the longer an electric current was made to flow through a filament of oxide of magnesium, the greater became the conductivity of the filament. In the same way, the more you call upon and use your subconscious mind, the greater becomes its conductivity in passing along to you the infinite resources of universal mind. The wisdom of a Solomon, the skill of a Michelangelo, the genius of an Edison, the daring of a Napoleon, all may be yours. It rests with you only to form the contact with universal mind in order to draw from it what you will. Think of this power as something that you can connect with any time. It has the answer to all of your problems. It offers you freedom from fear, from worry, from sickness, from accident. No man and no thing can interfere with your use of this power or diminish your spare of it. No one, that is, but yourself. Don Carlos Musser expresses it well in You Are. Because of the law of gravitation the apple falls to the ground. Because of the law of growth the acorn becomes a mighty oak. Because of the law of causation, a man is, as he thinketh in his heart. Nothing can happen without its adequate cause. Success does not come to you by accident. It comes as the logical result of the operation of law. Mind, working through your brain and your body, makes your world. That it is not a better world and a bigger one, is due to your limited thoughts and beliefs. They dam back the flood of ideas that mind is constantly striving to manifest through you. God never made a failure or a nobody. He offers to the highest and the lowest alike all that is necessary to happiness and success. The difference is entirely in the extent to which each of us avails himself of that generosity. There is no reason why you should hesitate to aspire to any position, any honor, any goal, for the mind within you is fully able to meet any need. It is no more difficult for it to handle a great problem than a small one. Mind is just as much present in your little everyday affairs as in those of a big business or a great nation. Don't set it doing trifling rums in arithmetic when it might just as well be solving problems of moment to yourself and the world. Start something. Use your initiative. Give your mind something to work upon. The greatest of all success secrets is initiative. It is the one quality which more than any other has put men in high places. Conceive something. Conceive it first in your own mind. Make the pattern there, and your subconscious mind will draw upon the plastic substance or energy all about you to make that model real. Drive yourself. Force yourself. It is the dreamer, the man with imagination, who has made the world move. Without him, we would still be in the Stone Age. Galileo looked at the moon and dreamed of how he might reach it. The telescope was the fruition of that dream. What dreamed of what might be done with steam, and our great locomotives and engines of today are the result. Franklin dreamed of harnessing the lightning, and today we have man-made thunderbolts. Initiative, plus imagination, will take you anywhere. Imagination opens the eyes of the mind, and there is nothing good you can image there that is not possible of fulfillment in your daily life. Imagination is the connecting link between the human and the divine, between the formed universe and formless energy. It is, of all things human, the most godlike. It is our part of divinity. Through it we share in the creative power of universal mind. Through it we can turn the most drab existence into a thing of life and beauty. It is the means by which we avail ourselves of all the good which universal mind is constantly offering to us in such profusion. It is the means by which we can reach any goal, win any prize. What was it gave us the submarine, the aeroplane, wireless, electricity? Imagination. What was it that enabled men to build the Simplon Tunnel, the Panama Canal, the Hell Gate span? Imagination. What is it that makes us successful and happy, or poor and friendless? Imagination, or the lack of it. It was imagination that sent Spanish and English and French adventurers to this new world. It was imagination that urged the early settlers westward, ever westward. It was imagination that built out railroads, our towns, our great cities. Parents foolishly try to discourage imagination in their children, when all it needs is proper guidance. For imagination forms the world from which their future will take its shape. Restrain the one and you constrict the other. Develop the one in the right way, and there is no limit to the other. Uncontrolled, the imagination is like a rudderless ship. Or even, at times, like the lightning. But properly controlled, it is like the ship that carries riches from port to port. Or like the electric current, carrying unlimited power for industry and progress. Do you want happiness? Do you want success? Do you want position, power, riches? Image them. How did God first make men? In his image created he him. He imaged men in his mind. And that is the way everything has been made since time began. It was first imaged in mind. That is the way everything you want must start, with a mental image. So use your imagination. Picture in it your heart's desire. Imagine it, daydream it so vividly, so clearly, that you will actually believe you have it. In the moment that you carry this conviction to your subconscious mind, in that moment your dream will become a reality. It may be a while before you realize it, but the important part is done. You have created the model. You can safely leave it to your subconscious mind to do the rest. When Jesus adjured his disciples, "Whatsoever ye desire, when ye pray, believe that ye receive it," he was not only telling them a great truth, but he was teaching what we moderns would call excellent psychology as well. For this belief is what acts upon the subconscious mind. It is through this belief that formless energy is compressed into material form. Every man wants to get out of the rut, to grow, to develop into something better. Here is the open road, open to you whether you have schooling, training, position, wealth, or not. Remember this, your subconscious mind knew more from the time you were a baby than is in all the books in all the colleges and libraries of the world. So don't let lack of training, lack of education, hold you back. Your mind can meet every need, and will do so if you give it the chance. The apostles were almost all poor men, uneducated men, yet they did a work that is unequaled in historical annals. Joan of Arc was a poor peasant girl, unable to read or write, yet she saved France. The pages of history are dotted with poor men, uneducated men, who thought great thoughts, who used their imaginations to master circumstances and became rulers of men. Most great dynasties started with some poor, obscure men. Napoleon came of a poor, humble family. He got his appointment to the military academy only through very hard work and the pulling of many political strings. Even as a captain of artillery he was so poverty-stricken that he was unable to buy his equipment when offered an appointment to India. Business today is full of successful men who have scarcely the rudiments of ordinary education. It was only after he had made his millions that Andrew Carnegie hired a tutor to give him the essentials of an education. So it isn't training and it isn't education that make you successful. These help, but the thing that really counts is that gift of the gods, creative imagination. You have that gift. Use it. Make every thought, every fact, that comes into your mind pay you a profit. Make it work and produce for you. Think of things, not as they are but as they might be. Make them real, live, and interesting. Don't merely dream, but create. Then use your imagination to make that creation of advantage to mankind, and, incidentally, yourself. 20. What do you lack? I read the papers every day, and often counter tales which show there's hope for every J who in life's battle fails. I've just been reading of a gent who joined the has-been ranks, at 50 years without a cent, or credit at the banks. But undismayed he buckled down, refusing to be beat, and captured fortune and renown. He's now on easy street. Men say that fellows down and out ne'er leave the rockly track, but facts will show, beyond a doubt, that has-beens do come back. I know, for I who write this rhyme, when 40-odd years old, was down and out, without a dime, my whiskers full of mold. By black disaster I was trounced until it jarred my spine. I was a failure so pronounced I didn't need a sign. And after I had soaked my coat, I said, at 43, I'll see if I can catch the goat that has escaped from me. I labored hard, I strained my dome, to do my daily grind, until in triumph I came home, my billy goat behind. And any man who still has health may with the winners stack, and have a chance at fame and wealth, for has-beens do come back. Walt Mason. Do you know why it is that the Bolsheviki are so opposed to religion? Because religion, as it is commonly accepted, teaches men resignation to conditions as they are, teaches, in effect, that God created some men poor and some rich. That this unequal distribution is a perfectly natural thing. And that we must not rail against it because it will all be made right in the next world. Napoleon, in his early Jacobin days, denounced religion for that very reason. But when he had won to power, when he planned to make himself emperor, then he found he had need for that religion, and re-established the church in France. 4. He reasoned, how can people be satisfied without religion? If one man is starving, near another who is making himself sick by eating too much, how can you expect to keep the starving one resigned to his fate unless you teach him it will all be made right in some indefinite future state? Organized society could not exist, as he planned it, without some being rich and some poor, and to keep the poor satisfied, there must be an authority to declare, God wills it thus. But just be patient. In the hereafter all this will be different. You will be the ones then to occupy the places of honor. Religion, in other words, as it is ordinarily taught, is a fine thing to keep the common people satisfied. But Christianity was never meant for a weapon to keep the rich wealthy and secure, the poor satisfied and in their proper place. On the contrary, Christianity as taught by Jesus opened the way to all good. And Christianity as it was practiced in its early years was an idealized form of socialism that benefited each and all. No one was wealthier than his neighbors, it is true, but neither was any poverty-stricken. Theirs was the creed of the Three Musketeers, all for one, and one for all. Ask and ye shall receive, said Jesus. Seek and ye shall find. That was not directed to the rich alone. That was to all men. Providence has never made a practice of picking out certain families or certain individuals and favoring them to the detriment of other people, much as some of our leading families would have us believe it. It is only man that has arrogated to himself that privilege. We laugh now at the divine right of kings. It is just as ridiculous to think that a few have the right to all the good things of life, while the many have to toil and sweat to do them service. To quote Rumbold's last words from the scaffold, I never could believe that Providence had sent a few men into the world ready booted and spurred to ride, and millions ready saddled and bridled to be ridden. There is nothing right in poverty. Not only that, but there is nothing meritorious in poverty. The mere fact that you are poor and ground down by fear and worry is not going to get you any forwarder in the hereafter. On the contrary, your soul is likely to be too pinched by want, too starved and shriveled to be able to expand. The kingdom of heaven is within you. To me that means that heaven is here and now. That if we want any happiness from it we've got to get it as we go along. I've never been much of a believer in accepting these promissory notes for happiness. Every time one of them falls due, you find you just have to renew it for another 6 months or a year, until one of these days you wake up and find that the bank has busted and all your notes are not worth the paper they are written on. The Cumean Sibyl is said to have offered Tarquin the Proud 9 books for what he thought an exorbitant sum. So he refused. She burned 3 of the books, and placed the same price on the 6 as on the original 9. Again he refused. She burned 3 more books, and offered the remainder for the sum she had first asked. This time Tarquin accepted. The books were found to contain prophecies and invaluable directions regarding Roman policy, but alas, they were no longer complete. So it is with happiness. If you take it as you go along, you get it in its entirety. But if you keep putting off the day when you shall enjoy it, if you keep taking promissory notes for happiness, every day will mean one day less of it that you will have. Yet the cost is just the same. The purpose of existence is growth. You can't grow spiritually or mentally without happiness. And by happiness I don't mean a timid resignation to the will of God. That so-called will of God is more often than not either pure laziness on the part of the resigned one or pure cussedness on the part of the one that is putting something over on him. It is the most sanctimonious expression yet devised to excuse some condition that no one has the energy or the ability to rectify. No, by happiness I mean the everyday enjoyment of everyday people. I mean love and laughter and honest amusement. Every one of us is entitled to it. Every one of us can have it, if he has the will and the energy to get out and get it for himself. Joyless work, small pay, no future, nothing to look forward to, God never planned such an existence. It is man-made, and you can be men enough to unmake it as far as you and yours are concerned. God never made any man poor any more than he made any man sick. Look around you. All of nature is bountiful. On every hand you see profusion, in the trees, in the flowers, in everything that he planned. The only law of nature is the law of supply. Poverty is unnatural. It is man-made, through the limits man puts upon himself. God never put them there any more than he showed partiality by giving to some of his children gifts and blessings which he withheld from others. His gifts are just as available to you as to any man on earth. The difference is all in your understanding of how to avail yourself of the infinite supply all about you. Take the worry clamps off your mentality and you will make the poverty clamps loosen up from your finances. Your affairs are so closely related to your consciousness that they too will relax into peace, order, and plenty. Divine ideas in your spiritual consciousness will become active in your business, and will work out as your abundant prosperity. As David V. Bush says in Applied Psychology and Scientific Living, thoughts are things, thoughts are energy, thoughts are magnets which attract to us the very things which we think. Therefore, if a man is in debt, he will, by continually thinking about debt, bring more debts to him. For thoughts are causes, and he fastens more debts onto himself and actually creates more obligations by thinking about debts. Concentrate and think upon things that you want, not on things which you ought not to have. Think of abundance, of opulence, of plenty, of position, harmony, and growth, and if you do not see them manifested today, they will be realized tomorrow. If you must pass through straits of life where you do not outwardly see abundance, know that you have it within, and that in time it will manifest itself. I say, if you concentrate on debt, debt is what you will have. If you think about poverty, poverty is what you will receive. It is just as easy, when once the mind becomes trained, to think prosperity and abundance and plenty, as it is to think lack, limitation, and poverty. Prosperity is not limited to time or to place. It manifests when and where there is consciousness to establish it. It is attracted to the consciousness that is free from worry, strain, and tension. So never allow yourself to worry about poverty. Be careful, take ordinary business precautions, of course. But don't center your thought on your troubles. The more you think of them, the more tightly you fasten them upon yourself. Think of the results you are after, not of the difficulties in the way. Mind will find the way. It is merely up to you to choose the goal, then keep your thoughts steadfast until that goal is won. The greatest shortcut to prosperity is to live it. Prosperity attracts. Poverty repels. To quote Orison Swett Marden, to be ambitious for wealth and yet always expecting to be poor, to be always doubting your ability to get what you long for, is like trying to reach east by traveling west. There is no philosophy which will help a man to succeed when he is always doubting his ability to do so, and thus attracting failure. Again, no matter how hard you may work for success, if your thought is saturated with the fear of failure, it will kill your efforts, neutralize your endeavors, and make success impossible. The secret of prosperity lies in so vividly imaging it in your own mind that you literally exude prosperity. You feel prosperous, you look prosperous, and the result is that before long you are prosperous. I remember seeing a play a number of years ago that was based on this thought. A young fellow, a chronic failure, was persuaded by a friend to carry a roll of $1,000 counterfeit bills in his pocket, and to show them, unostentatiously, when the occasion offered. Of course, everyone thought he had come into some legacy. The natural inference was that anyone who carried $50,000 or $100,000 bills in his pockets must have a lot more in the bank. Opportunities flocked to him. Opportunities to make good. Opportunities to make money. He made good. And that without having to spend any of this spurious money of his. For most business today is done on credit. I know many wealthy men who seldom carry anything but a little change in their pockets for tips. Everything they do, everything they buy, is charged. And big deals are put through in the same way. If a man is believed to have plenty of money, if he has a reputation for honesty and fair dealing, he may put through a transaction running into 6 or 7 figures without paying 1 cent down. The thing that counts is not the amount of your balance at the bank, but what others think of you, the image you have created in your own and in others' minds. What do you lack? What thing do you want most? Realize that before it or any other thing can be, it must first be imaged in mind. Realize, too, that when you can close your eyes and actually see that thing, you have brought it into being, you have drawn upon that invisible substance all about you, you have created something. Hold it in your thought, focus your mind upon it, believe that you have it, and you can safely leave its material manifestation to the genie of your mind. God is but another name for the invisible, everywhere present, source of things. Out of the air the seed gathers the essences which are necessary to its bountiful growth. Out of the invisible ether our minds gather the rich ideas that stimulate us to undertake and to carry out enterprises that bring prosperity to us. Let us see with the eye of the mind a bountiful harvest, then our minds will be quickened with ideas of abundance, and plenty will appear, not only in our world, but everywhere. As the rain cometh down and the snow from heaven, and returneth not thither, but watereth the earth, and maketh it bring forth and bud, and giveth seed to the sower and bread to the eater, so shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it. Isaiah 21. The sculptor and the clay. Eternal mind the potter is, and thought the eternal clay. The hand that fashions is divine, his works pass not away. God could not make imperfect man his model infinite, unhallowed thought he could not plan, love's work and love must fit. Alice Dayton. When you step into your office on Monday morning, no doubt you have dreams of wonderful achievement. Your step is firm, your brain is clear, and you have carefully thought out just what you will do and how you will accomplish big things in your business. Perhaps the very plans you have in mind will influence your whole business career, and you have visions of the dollars that will be yours rolling into your bank account. But do these dreams come true? Are you always able to put through what you had planned to do? Does your day's work have the snap and power you imagined it would have? Are you ever forced to admit that your dreams of big accomplishment are of 10 shattered because of fagged nerves and lack of energy, because you have not the pep? How easy it is to think back and see how success was in your grasp if only you had felt equal to that extra bit of effort, if only you had had the pep, the energy to reach out and take it. The great men of the world have been well men, strong men. Sickness and hesitancy go hand in hand. Sickness means weakness, querulousness, lack of faith, lack of confidence in oneself and in others. But there is no real reason for sickness or weakness, and there is no reason why you should remain weak or sick if you are so afflicted now. Remember the story of the sculptor Pygmalion? How he made a statue of marble so beautiful that every woman who saw it envied it. So perfect was it that he fell in love with it himself, hung it with flowers and jewels, spent day after day in rapt admiration of it, until finally the gods took pity upon him and breathed into it the breath of life. There is more than pagan mythology to that story. There is this much truth in it, that any man can set before his mind's eye the image of the figure he himself would like to be, and then breathe the breath of life into it merely by keeping that image before his subconscious mind as the model on which to do its daily building. For health and strength are natural. It is ill health and weakness that are unnatural. Your body was meant to be lithe, supple, muscular, full of red-blooded energy and vitality. A clear brain, a powerful heart, a massive chest, wrists and arms of steel, all these were meant for you, all these you can have if you will but know, and feel, and think aright. Just take stock of yourself for a moment. Are your muscles tough, springy, and full of vim? Do they do all you ask of them, and then beg for more? Can you eat a good meal, and forget it? If you can't, it's your own fault. You can have a body alive with vitality, a skin smooth and fine of texture, muscles supple and virile. You can be the man you have always dreamed of being, without arduous dieting, without tiresome series of exercises, merely by following the simple rules herein laid down. For what is it that builds up the muscles, puts energy and vitality into your system, gives you the pep and vigor of youth? Is it exercise? Then why is it that so many day laborers are poor, weak, anemic creatures, forced to lay off from 1 to 3 months every year on account of sickness? They get plenty of exercise and fresh air. Why is it that so many athletes die of tuberculosis or of weak hearts? They get the most scientific exercise year in and year out. Just the other day I read of the sudden death of Martin A. Delaney, the famous trainer, known all over the country as a physical director. He taught thousands how to be strong, but, athletic heart, killed him at 55. Passers-by saw him running for a car, then suddenly topple over dead. Exercise as a panacea for all human ills is dangerously overrated, Dr. Charles M. Wharton, in charge of health and physical education at the University of Pennsylvania, said today, March 20, 1926, according to an Associated Press dispatch. Dr. Wharton, who has been a trainer of men for 30 years and was an All-American guard on the Pennsylvania football team in 1895 and 1896, declared the search for the fountain of youth by exercise and diet has been commercialized to a point of hysteria. Someone should cry a halt against this wild scramble for health by unnatural means, said Dr. Wharton. This indiscriminate adoption of severe physical training destroys the health of more people than it improves. Dr. Wharton said he was appalled by the amount of physical defects and weaknesses developed by overindulgence in athletics by students in preparatory schools. I know I am presenting an unpopular viewpoint, and it may sound strange coming from a physical director. In gymnasium work at the University of Pennsylvania, we try to place our young men in sports which they will enjoy, and thus get a physical stimulation from relaxed play. Is it diet? Then why is it that so many people you know, who have been dieting for years, are still such poor, flabby creatures? Doesn't it always work, or is it merely a matter of guesswork, and those were the cases where no one happened to guess right? Why is it that doctors disagree so on what is the correct diet? For years we have been taught to forswear too much meat. For years we have been told that it causes rheumatism and gout and hardening of the arteries, and a dozen or more other ailments. Now comes Dr. Woods Hutchinson, a noted authority, quoted the world over, and says, all the silly old prejudice against meat, that it heated the blood, whatever that means, and produced uric acid to excess, hardened the arteries, inflamed the kidneys, caused rheumatism, etc., has now been proved to be pure fairy tales, utterly without foundation in scientific fact. Red meats have nothing whatever to do with causing gout and rheumatism, because neither of these diseases is due to foods or drinks of any sort, but solely to what we call local infections. Little pockets of pus, matter, full of robber germs, mostly streptococci, around the roots of our teeth, in the pouches of our tonsils, in the nasal passages and sinuses of our foreheads and faces opening into them. Our belief now is, no pockets of pus, no rheumatism or gout. Food of any kind has absolutely nothing to do with the case. On the other hand, the very worst cases on record in all medical history of hardening and turning to lime, calcification, of the arteries all over the body, and in the kidneys and intestines particularly, have been found in Trappist and certain orders of Oriental monks who live almost exclusively upon starch and pulse, that is, peas, beans, and lentils, and abstain from meat entirely. Then what is right? Is it the combination of diet and exercise? But surely the patients in sanitariums and similar institutions would have every chance to get just the right combination, yet how often you see them come out little, if any, better off than when they went in. No. None of these is the answer. As a matter of fact, the principal good of either diet or exercise is that it keeps before the patient's mind the result he is working for, and in that way tends to impress it upon his subconscious mind. That is why physical culturists always urge you to exercise in front of a mirror. If results are achieved, it is mind that achieves them, not the movements you go through or the particular kind of food you eat. Understand, I don't ask you to stop exercising. A reasonable amount of light, pleasant exercise is good for you mentally and physically. It develops your willpower. It helps to impress upon your subconscious mind the image you want to see realized in your body. And it takes your mind off your troubles and worries, centering your thoughts instead upon your desires. Just where your thoughts should always be. Outdoor exercise, tennis, horseback, swimming, any sort of active game, is the best rest there is for a tired mind. For mental tiredness comes from a too steady contemplation of one's problems. And anything that will take one's mind completely off them, and give the subconscious time to work out the solution, is good. That is why it so often happens that you go back to your work after a day of play, not merely refreshed, but with so clear a mind that the problems which before seemed insurmountable are but as child's play to you. You who envy the rosy cheek and sparkling eye of youth, who awake in the morning weary and unrefreshed, who go to your daily tasks with fagged brain and heavy tread, just remember that perfect youth or perfect health is merely a state of mind. There is only one thing that puts muscles on your bones. There is only one thing that keeps your organs functioning with precision and regularity. There is only one thing that builds for you a perfect body. That one thing is your subconscious mind. Every cell and tissue, every bone and sinew, every organ and muscle in your entire body is subject to the control of your subconscious mind. As it directs, so they build or function. True, that subconscious mind accepts suggestions from your conscious mind. Hold before it the thought that the exercise you are taking is building muscle upon your arms or shoulders, and your subconscious mind will fall in readily with the suggestion and strengthen those muscles. Hold before it the thought that some particular food gives you unusual energy and pep, and the subconscious mind will be entirely agreeable to producing the added vigor. But have you ever noticed how some sudden joy, which is entirely a mental state, energizes and revitalizes you, more than all the exercise or all the tonics you can take? Have you ever noticed how martial music will relieve the fatigue of marching men? Have you ever noticed how sorrow, which is entirely a mental state, will depress and devitalize you, regardless of any amount of exercise or health foods you may take? Each of us has within him all the essentials that go to the making of a Superman. But so has every acorn the essentials for making a great oak tree, yet the Japanese show us that even an oak may be stunted by continual pruning of its shoots. Negative and weak thoughts, thoughts of self-doubt, of mistrust, continually prune back the vigorous life ever seeking so valiantly to show forth the splendor and strength of the radiant inner self. Choose what you will be. Your responsibility is to think, speak, act the true inner self. Your privilege is to show forth in this self the fullness of peace and plenty. Keep steadfastly in mind the idea of yourself that you want to see realized. Your daily, hourly, and continual idea of yourself, your life, your affairs, your world, and your associates, determines the harvest, the showing forth. Look steadfastly to your highest ideal of self, and your steadfast and lofty ideal will draw forth blessing and prosperity not only upon you, but upon all who know you. For mind is the only creator, and thought is the only energy. All that counts is the image of your body that you are holding in your thought. If heretofore that image has been one of weakness, of ill health, change it now, today. Repeat to yourself, the first thing upon awakening in the morning and the last thing before going to sleep at night, my body was made in the image and likeness of God. God first imagined it in its entirety, therefore every cell and bone and tissue is perfect, every organ and muscle performing its proper function. That is the only model of me in universal mind. That is the only model of me that my subconscious mind knows. Therefore, since mind, God, is the only creator, that is the only model of me that I can have. 22. Why grow old? And Moses was 120 years old when he died, his eye was not dim, nor his natural force abated. Remember how you used to plow through great masses of work day after day and month after month, cheerily, enthusiastically, with never a sign of tiring or nervous strain. Remember how you used to enjoy those evenings, starting out as fresh from your office or shop as if you hadn't just put a hard day's work behind you. No doubt you've often wondered why you can't work and enjoy yourself like that now, but solaced yourself with the moth-eaten fallacy that, as a man grows older he shouldn't expect to get the same fun out of life that he did in his earlier years. Poor old exploded idea. Youth is not a matter of time. It is a mental state. You can be just as brisk, just as active, just as light-hearted now as you were 10 or 20 years ago. Genuine youth is just a perfect state of health. You can have that health, and the boundless energy and capacity for work or enjoyment that go with it. You can cheat time of 10, 20, or 50 years, not by taking thought of what you shall eat or what you shall drink, not by diet or exercise, but solely through a right understanding of what you should expect of your body. If only I had my life to live over again. How often you have heard it said. How often you have thought it. But the fact is that you can have it. You can start right now and live again as many years as you have already experienced. Health, physical freedom, and full vigor need not end for you at 35 or 40, nor at 60 or 70. Age is not a matter of years. It is a state of mind. In an address before the American Sociological Society a few months ago, Dr. Hornell Hart of Bryn Mawr predicted that babies born in the year 2000 will have something like 200 years of life ahead of them, and men and women of 100 years will be quite the normal thing. But instead of being wrinkled and crippled, these centenarians will be in their vigorous prime. Thomas Parr, an Englishman, lived to be 152 years old, and was sufficiently hale and hearty at the age of 120 to take unto himself a second wife. Even at 152, his death was not due to old age, but to a sudden and drastic change in his manner of life. All his days he had lived upon simple fare, but his fame reaching the king, he was invited to London and there feasted so lavishly that he died of it. In a dispatch to the New York Times on February 14 last, I read of an Arab now in Palestine, one Salah Mustafa Salah Abu Musa, who at the age of 105 is growing his third set of teeth. There is an ancient city in Italy which can be approached by sea only through a long stretch of shallow water full of rocks and cross currents. There is one safe channel, and it is marked by posts. In the days of the sea rovers, the city used to protect itself by pulling up the posts whenever a rover hove in sight. Mankind has taken to planting posts along its way to mark the flight of time. Every year we put in a new one, heedless of the fact that we are thus marking a clear channel for our archenemy, age, to enter in from the sea of human belief. But the fact is that there is no natural reason for man to grow old as soon as he does, no biological reason for him to grow old at all. Why is it that the animals live 8 to 10 times their maturity, when man lives only about twice his? Why? Because man hastens decrepitude and decay by holding the thought of old age always before him. Dr. Alexis Carrel, Nobel Prize winner and member of the Rockefeller Institute, has demonstrated that living cells taken from a body, properly protected and fed, can be kept alive indefinitely. Not only that, but they grow. In 1912 he took some tissue from the heart of an embryo chick and placed it in a culture medium. It is living and growing yet. Recently Dr. Carrel showed a moving picture of these living cells before the American Institute of Electrical Engineers. They grow so fast that they double in size every 24 hours, and have to be trimmed daily. The cells of your being can be made to live indefinitely when placed outside your body. Single-celled animals never die a natural death. They live on and on until something kills them. Now scientists are beginning to wonder if multicellular animals like man really need to die. Under the title, Immortality and Rejuvenation in Modern Biology, M. Metalnikov, of the Pasteur Institute, has just published a volume that should be read by all those who have decided that it is necessary to grow old and die. Here is the first sentence of the concluding chapter of the book. What we have just written forces us to maintain our conviction that immortality is the fundamental property of living organisms. And further on, old age and death are not a stage of earthly existence. And that, mind you, is set forth under the aegis of a scientific establishment that has no equal in the world, and of a scholar universally respected. As the Journal of Paris says in reviewing the article, most religious and philosophic systems assert the immortality of the soul. But the positive sciences have shown themselves more skeptical on this point. This idea seems to them quite contradictory to all that we know, or think we know, of animal life. Animal life originates as a tiny germ, which becomes an embryo, developing into an adult organism, which grows old and finally dies. This means the disappearance of all the faculties of life that so clearly distinguish it from an inanimate object. There is no scientific evidence to show that at this moment the soul does not disappear with the body, and that it continues its existence separately. Biologists cannot even conceive the possibility of separation of soul and body, so strong and indissoluble are the bonds that unite all our psychic manifestations with our bodily life. For them an immortal soul only can exist in an immortal body. What if it were so? What if our organism is really indestructible? It is this that M. Metalnikov attempts scientifically to prove. Death is a permanent and tangible phenomenon only in the case of man and the higher animals. It is not so for plants and for the simpler forms of animal life, the protozoans. These last, composed often of a single cell, just observable under the microscope, are however without the chief faculties that characterize the higher animals. They move about by means of vibratory hair-like processes, sustain themselves, seek their food, hunt animals still smaller than themselves, react to irritations of different kinds, and multiply. But this multiplication is not effected by means of special organs, as among the higher animals, but by the division of the whole organism into two equal parts. The common infusoria which abound in fresh water thus divide once or twice every 24 hours. Each daughter cell continues to live like the mother cell, of which it is the issue. It feeds, grows, and divides in its turn. And never, in this constantly renewed cycle in their lives, do we find the phenomenon of natural death, so characteristic and so universal in the higher animals. The infusorium is subject only to accidental death, such as we can cause by the addition of some poisonous element to the water in which it lives, or by heat. Experiments along this line were made long ago. The first were by de Saussure, in 1679. Having put an infusorium in a drop of water, he saw it divide under his eye. For days later it was impossible to count the number of creatures. However, some authors thought that this reproductive facility was not unlimited. Malpus himself, who made a minute study of it 40 years ago and succeeded in observing 700 successive generations of a single species, thought that it was finally subject to old age and to death. But the more recent works of Joukowsky at Heidelberg, of Kulagin at Petrograd, of Calkins in England, of Weissmann, and still others, lead to an opposite opinion. The degeneration observed by these workers was due to autointoxication, caused by not renewing the culture medium. Decisive experiments were made in Russia, dating from 1907, by Woodruff and by M. Metalnikov himself. Begun at Tsarskoye Selo, they continued until the tragic hours of the 1917 revolution, and were renewed at the University of Crimea. These investigators took an infusorium found in an aquarium, the Paramecium caudatum, whose characteristics are well determined, and in 13 years, in 1920, they had obtained 5,000 successive generations. Thus we are bound to say that a unicellular body possesses within itself the power of immortality. And we ourselves are made up only by the juxtaposition of simple cells. The Fountain of Youth. 400 years ago Ponce de Leon set sail into the mysteries of an unknown world in search of the Fountain of Youth, when all the time the secret of that fountain was right within himself. For the fact is, that no matter how many years have passed since you were born, you are only 11 months old today. Your body is constantly renewing itself. The one thing about it you can be surest of is change. Every one of the millions of cells of which it is composed is constantly being renewed. Even your bones are daily renewing themselves in this way. These cells are building, building, building. Every day they tear down old tissue and rebuild it with new. There is not a cell in your body, not a muscle or tissue, not a bone, that is more than 11 months old. Why then should you feel age? Why should you be any less spry, any less cheerful, than these youngsters around you that you have been envying? The answer is that you need not, if you will but realize your youthfulness. Every organ, every muscle, tissue, and cell of your body is subject to your subconscious mind. They rebuild exactly as that mind directs them. What is the model you are holding before your mind's eye? Is it one of age, of decrepitude? That is the model that most men use, because they know no better. That is the result that you see imaged upon their bodies. But you need not follow their outworn models. You can hold before your mind's eye only the vision of youth, of manly vigor, of energy, and strength and beauty, and that is the model that your cells will use to build upon. Do you know what is responsible for the whole difference between youth and age? Just one thing. Youth looks forward always to something better. Age looks backward and sighs over its lost youth. In youth we are constantly growing. We know we have not yet reached our prime. We know we can expect to continually improve. We look forward to ever-increasing physical powers. We look forward to a finer, more perfect physique. We look forward to greater mental alertness. We have been educated to expect these things. Therefore we believe we shall get them, and we get them. But what happens after we get to be 30 or 40 years of age? We think we have reached our prime. We have been taught that we can no longer look forward to greater growth, that all we can hope for is to hold our own for a little while, and then start swiftly downward to old age and decay. History shows that no nation, no institution, and no individual can continue for any length of time to merely hold his own. You must go forward, or back. You must move, or life will pass you by. Yours is the choice. If you will realize that there is never any end to growth, that your body is constantly being rebuilt, that perfection is still so far ahead of you that you can continue growing towards it indefinitely, you need never know age. You can keep on growing more perfect, mentally and physically, every day. Every minute you live is a minute of conception and rebirth. You may be weak and anemic. You may be crippled or bent. No matter. You can start today to rebuild along new lines. In 11 months at the most, every one of those weak and devitalized cells, every one of those bent and crippled bones, will be replaced by new, strong, vigorous tissue. Look at Annette Kellerman, crippled and deformed as a child, yet she grew up into the world's most perfectly formed woman. Look at Roosevelt, weak and anemic as a young man, yet he made himself the envy of the world for boundless vigor and energy. And they are but 2 cases out of thousands I could quote. Many of the world's strongest men were weaklings in their childhood. It matters not what your age, what your condition, you can start now renewing your youth, growing daily nearer the mode of you that is imaged in universal mind. Arthur Brisbane says that at the age of 85 George F. Baker is doing the work of 10 men. That is what every man of 85 ought to be doing, for he should have not only the physical vigor and strength and enthusiasm of 21, but combined with them he should have the skill and experience, the ripened judgment of 85. There is no more despairing pronouncement than the belief of the average man that he matures only to begin at once to deteriorate and decay. When the actual fact is, as stated in a recent utterance by the eminent Dr. Hammond, there is no physiological reason why a man should die. He asserted, and the statement is corroborated by scientists and physiologists, that the human body possesses inherent capacity to renew and continue itself and its functions indefinitely. Your body wear out? Of course it does, just as all material things do. But with this difference, your body is being renewed just as fast as it wears out. Have you damaged some part of it? Don't worry. Down inside you is a chemical laboratory which can make new parts just as good or better than the old. Up in your subconscious mind is a master chemist with all the formulas of universal mind to draw upon, who can keep that chemical laboratory of yours making new parts just as fast as you can wear out the old. But that master chemist is like all of us, like you. He is inclined to lazy a bit on the job, if you let him. Try to relieve him of some of his functions, and he won't bother about them further. Take to the regular use of drugs or other methods of eliminating the waste matter from the body, and your master chemist will figure that your conscious MMD has taken over this duty from him, and will leave it thereafter to your conscious mind. Lead him to believe that you no longer expect him to rebuild your body along such perfect lines as in youth, and he will slow down in his work of removing the old, worn-out tissues, and of replacing them with new, better material. The result? Arteries clogged with worn-out cells. Tissues dried and shrunken. Joints stiff and creaky. In short, old age. The fault is not with the master chemist. It is with you. You didn't hold him to the job. When a business or an enterprise or an expedition fails, it is not the rank and file who are to blame, it is the directing head. He didn't give his men the right plans to work on. He didn't supply the proper leadership. He didn't keep them keyed up to their best work. What would you think of an engineer who, with the best plans in the world, the best material with which to build, threw away his plans when he was half through with the job and let his men do as they pleased, ruining all his early work and all his fine material by putting the rest of it together any which way? Yet that is what you do when you stop looking forward at 30 or 40, and decide thereafter to just grow old any which way. You throw away the wonderful model on which you have been building, you take the finest material in the world, and let your workmen put it together any way they like. In fact, you do worse than that. You tell them you don't expect much from them anymore. That any sort of a patched-up job they put together after that will be about as good as you can look for. Men alive. What would you expect from ordinary workmen to whom you talk like that? Your inner workmen are no different. You will get from them just what you look for, no more, no less. Your time of life should be the best time you have yet known. The engineer who has built 40 bridges should be far more proficient than the one who has built only a few. The model you are passing on to your master chemist now ought to be a vastly more perfect model than the one you gave to him at 20. Instead of feeling that your heart is giving out and your stomach weak, you ought to be boasting of how much better a heart you are now making than a few years ago, how much more perfectly your stomach is functioning than before you learned that you were its boss. Of one thing you can be sure. God never decreed a law of decay and death. If there is any such law, it is man-made, and men can unmake it. The life principle that came to this planet thousands or millions of years ago brought no death principle with it. For death is like darkness, it is nothing in itself. Death is merely the absence of life, just as darkness is merely the absence of light. Keep that life surging, strongly. In the Book of Wisdom, of the apocryphal writings, you read, "For God made not death, neither hath he pleasure in the destruction of the living. For he created all things that they might have being, and the generative powers of the world are healthsome, and there is no poison of destruction in them, nor hath death dominion upon the earth. For righteousness is immortal. But ungodly men with their works and words called death unto them. For God created men to be immortal, and made him to be an image of his own proper being. But by the envy of the devil came death into the world. Whosoever liveth and believeth in me, understandeth me, said Jesus, shall never die. And again, if a man keep my saying, he shall never see death." Universal mind knows no imperfection, no decay, no death. It does not produce sickness and death. It is your conscious mind that has decreed these evils. Banish the thought, and you can banish the effect. Life was never meant to be measured by years. I remember reading a story of a traveler who had journeyed to a land of perpetual sun. Since there was no sunrise and no sunset, no moons or changing sea suns, there was no means of measuring time. Therefore to the inhabitants of that land, time did not exist. And having no time, they never thought to measure ages and consequently never grew old. Like organisms with a single cell, they did not die except by violence. There is more truth than fiction to that idea. The measurement of life by the calendar robs youth of its vigor and hastens old age. It reminds me of the days of our grandparents, when a woman was supposed to doll her hat and don a bonnet at 40. And donning a bonnet was like taking the veil. She was supposed to retire to her chimney corner and make way for the younger generation. Men and women ought to grow with years into greater health, broader judgment, maturer wisdom. Instead of becoming atrophied, and dead to all new ideas, their minds should through practice hold ever stronger images before them of youthful vigor and freshness. The psalmist says, "But thou art the same, and thy years shall have no end." No one need retire to the chimney corner, no matter how many years have passed over his head. Years should bring wisdom and greater health, not decrepitude. Many of the world's famous men did their greatest work long after the age when most men are in their graves. Tennyson composed the immortal lines of "Crossing the Bar" at the age of 80. Plato still had pen in hand at 81. Cato learned Greek at the same age. Humboldt completed his Cosmos in his 90th year, while John Wesley at 82 said, "It is 12 years now since I have felt any such sensation as fatigue." You are only as old as your mind. Every function, every activity of your body, is controlled by your mind. Your vital organs, your blood that sends the material for rebuilding to every cell and tissue, the processes of elimination that remove all the broken down and waste material, all are dependent for their functioning upon the energy derived from your mind. The human body can be compared to an electric transportation system. When the dynamo runs at full power, every car speeds along, and everything is handled with precision. But let the dynamo slow down and the whole system lags. That dynamo is your mind, and your thoughts provide the energy that runs it. Feed it thoughts of health and vigor and your whole system will reflect energy and vitality. Feed it thoughts of decrepitude and age, and you will find it slowing down to the halting pace you set for it. You can grow old at 30. You can be young at 90. It is up to you. Which do you choose? If you choose youth, then start this minute renewing your youth. Find a picture, or, better still, a statuette, of the men you would like to be, the form you would like to have. Keep it in your room. When you go to bed at night, visualize it in your mind's eye, hold it in your thought as the men you are going to be. The Journal of Education had the idea in their story of The Prince and the Statue in a recent issue. There was once a prince who had a crooked back. He could never stand straight up like even the lowest of his subjects. Because he was a very proud prince, his crooked back caused him a great deal of mental suffering. One day he called before him the most skillful sculptor in his kingdom and said to him, "Make me a noble statue of myself, true to my likeness in every detail with this exception, make this statue with a straight back. I wish to see myself as I might have been." For long months the sculptor worked hewing the marble carefully into the likeness of the prince, and at last the work was done, and the sculptor went before the prince and said, "The statue is finished, where shall I set it up?" One of the courtiers called out, "Set it before the castle gate where all can see it," but the prince smiled sadly, and shook his head. "Rather," said he, "place it in a secret nook in the palace garden where only I shall see it." The statue was placed as the prince ordered, and promptly forgotten by the world, but every morning, and every noon, and every evening the prince stole quietly away to where it stood and looked long upon it, noting the straight back and the unlifted head, and the noble brow. And each time he gazed, something seemed to go out of the statue and into him, tingling in his blood and throbbing in his heart. The days passed into months and the months into years, then strange rumors began to spread throughout the land. Said one, "The prince's back is no longer crooked or my eyes deceive me." Said another, "The prince is more noble looking or my eyes deceive me." Said another, "Our prince has the high look of a mighty man," and these rumors came to the prince, and he listened with a queer smile. Then went he out into the garden to where the statue stood and, behold, it was just as the people said, his back had become as straight as the statue's, his head had the same noble bearing, he was, in fact, the nobleman his statue proclaimed him to be. A novel idea? Not at all. 2,500 years ago, in the golden age of Athens, when its culture led the world, Grecian mothers surrounded themselves with beautiful statues that they might bring forth perfect children and that the children in turn might develop into perfect men and women. 11 months from now you will have an entirely new body, inside and out. Not a single cell, not a single bit of tissue that is now in you will be there then. What changes do you want made in that new body? What improvements? Get your new model clearly in your mind's eye. Picture it. Visualize it. Look forward daily a better physique, to greater mental power. Give that model to your subconscious mind to build upon, and before 11 months are out, that model will be you. Volume 7. 23. The Medicine Delusion. I find the medicine worse than the malady. Shakespeare. We are getting rid of the drug illusion, declared Dr. Woods Hutchinson, the noted medical writer of America, at a luncheon given on June 6, 1925, by the English-speaking Union to 700 American and Canadian doctors assembled in London, England. We are willing even to subscribe to the dictum of Oliver Wendell Holmes, the doctor added, that if 99% of all drugs we possess were thrown into the sea it would be a good thing for the human race, but rather hard on the fishes. Sir Arbuthnot Lane, surgeon to King George, seconded Dr. Hutchinson's remarks. They might say, he went on, that he was trying to establish a suicide club for doctors. It practically came to that, because as the public became educated in matters of health the medical profession might disappear. It was in fact an anomaly that a medical profession should exist. If people were healthy, there was no reason to have doctors at all. 25 years ago, the charms of the patent medicine fakir and the incantations of the Indian medicine men were in the heyday of their popularity. So long as you talked about their aches and pains, their diseases and ailments, people would buy any kind of a nostrum that an unscrupulous fakir chose to palm off upon them. Patent medicine manufacturers made fabulous fortunes selling cheap whiskey adulterated with burnt sugar and water, under 100 different names for $1 the bottle. You could hardly pick up a magazine or newspaper without seeing a dozen of their lurid ads. The day of the Indian medicine man and street corner fakir has passed. And for a time, thanks to the crusade against them led by Collier's, and backed by a number of other reputable magazines, patent medicine manufacturers suffered an eclipse. But they are back again today in a more respectable guise. Pick up almost any small town paper and you will find a dozen sovereign remedies for tired women or fretful children or run-down men. Concoctions, most of them, containing just enough alcohol to give you a pleasant sense of stimulation, enough burnt sugar to color them, and a whole lot of water. But if that were all, no great harm would be done. If the peddling of drugs depended entirely, or even mostly, on patent medicine advertisers, the end of it would soon be in sight. But it doesn't. The worst offenders of all are the ones who, of all people, should know better, some of the doctors. Understand, I don't mean all of them. And I don't mean the best of them. There are thousands of them like Dr. Woods Hutchinson who have the courage to get up and say that medicine itself cannot cure disease. That it never has cured disease. That nature is the only healer. Drugs can give you temporary relief from pain, yes. They can cleanse, yes. But as for curing anything, the drug is not made that can do it. The principal good that the administering of a drug has is in its effect upon the mind of the patient. Men have been taught for so many years that drugging is the only way to cure disease, that when you give them something, they believe they are going to be cured, and to the extent that they believe, they are cured. The best proof of that is to let two patients suffering from the same complaint go to two different physicians, the one a doctor of the regular school, the other a homeopath. The regular doctor will administer a dose containing 10,000 times as much of the mother drug as the homeopath. In fact, there is so slight a trace of any drug in the homeopath's prescription that it might be called none at all. Yet it frequently happens that his patient will respond just as readily to his denatured dose as the other will to his drug. Dr. Gore, in a recent issue of Pearson's magazine, said, "A few years ago there appeared an article in the Atlantic Monthly written by a young woman physician who was with the Red Cross in Russia. Immediately following the Kerensky Revolution, the Russian peasants who, for the first time in their lives, found that they could keep what they earned, began to think of going to doctors for ailments which had afflicted them for years, but which they could never before afford to have treated. Within 2 weeks' time this young physician exhausted her supply of medicine. But the rush of peasant patients continued and she was reduced to the placebo idea of administering colored waters with a slight amount of a single drug, quinine, if I recall correctly. For several weeks she obtained such wonderful results in every conceivable form of affliction that she said her faith in specific medication was completely lost." In a dispatch from Rome to the New York Herald Tribune, under date of June 15, 1926, I read, "Under the skeptical eyes of local doctors, Don Luigi Garofalo, a priest in the Quarto sector of Naples, alleges that he is curing all the ills that flesh is heir to, from pneumonia to broken bones, by a practical application of the theory derived from the text, 'Man is of dust and to dust he shall return.' Don Luigi argues that from a homeopathic viewpoint dust should be a curative element. So from dust taken from the reddish earth near Pozzuoli, which contains traces of sulfur and copper, he makes pills for the afflicted, but he contends that any other earth will do. The cures, most of which have been effected by means of the red earth, include the healing of broken limbs, tubercular cases, toothache, internal lesions, heart diseases, mumps, paralysis, and fevers. Of course, it is not to be inferred from this that reliance can be placed upon red earth, or any other kind of earth, to cure you of any ill. But it shows that even so common, ordinary a thing as a bit of dirt can be used to arouse people from the lethargic condition in which sickness so frequently leaves them, and give them the power to help themselves. Take another case. Your doctor prescribes regular doses of some drug. You take it once. It has the desired effect. You take it again. The effect is not quite so pronounced. You keep it up, and in a short time the drug seems to have lost its efficacy. Why? The same chemical elements are there. And if you mix the same chemical elements in a retort, you will get the same results whether you do it once or 1,000 times. Why doesn't it work the same way with drugs and your body? Because the strongest factor in bringing about the desired effect in the beginning was your belief, yours and that of your doctor. But as you kept on, your belief began to falter, until presently it died away altogether. You may have hoped, but the active belief suggestions to your subconscious mind had stopped carrying conviction. Dr. Richard C. Cabot, professor of medicine at Harvard University, in a recent address, declared that 3/4 of all illnesses are cured without the victims even knowing they have had them. Proof of this contention is to be found in post-mortem examinations, which time after time reveal indelible and unmistakable traces of disease which the subject has conquered all unknowingly. 90% of all typhoid cures itself, as does 75% of all pneumonia. In fact, out of a total of 215 diseases known to medical science, there are only about 8 or 9 which doctors conquer, the rest conquer themselves. He went on to say that, if nature, assisted by the proper mental and emotional moods, is capable of curing an ulcer in 3 or 4 weeks, why isn't it possible for the same force to heal a similar ulcer in a few minutes, when the curative processes have been speeded up abnormally? Great physicians have, on numerous occasions, maintained that there is no science in medicating people. In preventive medicine, yes. In surgery. In obstetrics. In a score of different lines that fall under the heading of the medical profession. But the art of drugging is little ahead of where it was in the Middle Ages, when Egyptian mummies were in great demand among druggists and powdered pharaoh was considered the greatest remedy for any ill that flesh was heir to. Every day brings the discovery of some new drug, and the consequent dictum that the remedy previously prescribed was all a mistake, that it had little or no real value whatever. One doctor says, a medicine that will not kill you if you take an overdose is no good. Another, the most prominent doctors now claim that there is not a single drug will do what it has been prescribed for in the past. Dr. Douglas White, writing in The Churchman, sums it up thus. All cure of every disease is spiritual. Healing can never be imposed from without by either the surgeon or physician. It is the living organism which, helped by the skill of the one or the other, is enabled to work its way back to health. The whole principle of healing in all cases is the vis medicatrix naturae. And when we speak of nature, we are only personifying the principle of life which Christians call God. In the medical record of September 25, 1920, Dr. Joseph Byrne, professor of neurology at Fordham University Medical School, said, at a conservative estimate it may be admitted that of all the ailments for which relief is sought, 90% or over are self-limited and tend to get well. It may also be admitted that in over 90% of all human ailments, the psychic is the dominating factor. In other words, mind is the healer. Drugs can sometimes make its work easier by removing obstructions, by killing off parasites. But the regular use of drugs is far more likely to harm than to heal. We might well quote to the druggists the old Hindu proverb. God gives the mango, the farmer plants dye seed. God cures the patient, the doctor takes the fees. In the Great War, the one drug that most proved its worth was iodine. And what is iodine? A cleanser. It killed germs. It cleansed wounds. But it has no healing power. And no healing was expected of it. It did all that was asked. It cauterized, cleansed, so that nature, mind, could do its own healing, unobstructed. That would seem to be the most that should be expected of any drug: kill the germs of sickness or disease, cleanse so that nature can the more easily do its rebuilding. And that is where the use of drugs should stop. Mind works best when it is interfered with least, when we throw ourselves entirely upon it for support, rather than share the responsibility with some outside agency. Dr. Burnett Ray, a well-known English specialist, addressing a large audience on the subject of spiritual healing in medical science, said the term spiritual healing was sometimes used in a manner which seemed to imply that there was a form of healing which was of a non-spiritual character, and that spiritual healing was incompatible with, or opposed to, medical practice. Healing could never be regarded as a purely physical process. He would go so far as to say that healing was always effected through the control of the mind, and medicinal remedies only set the machinery of the mind in motion. We are too apt to think of medical science as concerned with drugs or appliances and operations. These might completely pass away during the next 20 or 50 years. It is not through drugs that the medical profession has done so much of good for the world. It is not through drugs that they have improved the general health, cleaned up plague spots, cut down infant mortality, lengthened the average life expectancy of mankind by 15 years. It is by scotching disease at its very source. It is by getting rid of artificially created unwholesome conditions, getting back to natural wholesome conditions. What is it causes typhus? Filth, an entirely unwholesome condition, man-made. And how do doctors prevent the spread of typhus? By cleaning up, by getting back to natural wholesome conditions. What is it causes typhoid? Impure water. And its prevention is simply the purifying of the water, getting back to nature's perfect, wholesome supply. Yellow fever has been practically stamped out of existence. Typhus is almost a forgotten plague, except in such backward places as parts of Russia and Asia. Malaria has been conquered. And doctors predict that in another generation tuberculosis will be an almost forgotten malady. How were these wonderful results brought about? Not through drugs, but by cleaning up. Cleaning out swamps and filth. Purifying water. Building drainage systems. Making everything round about as clean and wholesome as nature herself. Cleanliness, purity, sunshine. God gave us in abundance all that is necessary for perfect health: clean air, pure water, clear sunshine. All we need to do is to keep these pure and clean, and to use all we possibly can of them. The greatest good the medical profession has done mankind is in discovering the value of these gifts of God and showing us how to use them. The Chinese have long had the right idea: they pay their physicians to keep them well, not to cure them of sickness. And the thing that made the reputation of such men as Gorgas, Reed, Flexner, Carrel, was not their cure of disease, but their prevention of it. That way lies the future of medicine, bringing our surroundings back to the natural wholesome conditions for which we were created. That way lies health and happiness for all, cleanliness inside and out, clean air, pure water, plenty of sunshine, and right thinking. In the next chapter, I shall try to show you how you can apply the illimitable power of mind hopefully towards the successful treatment of disease. 24. The Gift of the Magi. Sweep up the debris of decaying faiths, sweep down the cobwebs of worn-out beliefs, and throw your soul wide open to the light of reason and of knowledge. Be not afraid to thrust aside half-truths and grasp the whole. Ella Wheeler Wilcox. All over the world, sick, weak and devitalized men and women are searching for health and strength. By the hundreds of thousands, they drag their weary and aching boxes around, or languish on sick beds, waiting for someone to bring health to them corked up in a bottle. But real, lasting health was never found in pill boxes or medicine bottles. There is one method, and only one, by which it can be gained and kept. That method is by using the power of the subconscious mind. For a long time the doctors pooh-poohed any such idea. Then as the evidence piled up, they grudgingly admitted that nervous troubles and even functional disorders might be cured by mind. Even now there are some who, as Bernard Shaw put it, had rather bury a whole hillside ethically than see a single patient cured unethically. They will give credit to no method of healing outside the tenets of their own school. Yet, as Warren Hilton has it in Applied Psychology, all the literature of medicine, whether of ancient or modern times, abounds in illustrations of the power of the mind over the body in health and in disease. And medical science has always based much of its practice on this principle. No reputable school of medicine ever failed to instruct its students in practical applications of the principle of mental influence at the bedside of their patients. A brisk and cheery manner, a hopeful countenance, a supremely assured and confident demeanor, these things have always been regarded by the medical profession as but second in importance to sanitation and material remedies, while the value of the sugar-coated bread pill when the diagnosis was uncertain, has long been recognized. The properly trained nurse has always been expected to supplement the efforts of the attending physician by summoning the mental forces of the patient to his aid. She, therefore, surrounds the patient with an atmosphere of comfortable assurance. And by constantly advising him of his satisfactory progress toward speedy recovery she seeks to instill hope, confidence, and mental effort. To quote Dr. Didyma, the ideal physician irradiates the sick chamber with the light of his cheerful presence. He may not be hilarious, he is not indifferent, but he has an irrepressible good nature which lifts the patient out of the slough of despond and places his feet on the firm land of health. In desperate cases, even a little harmless levity may be beneficial. A well-timed jest may break up a congestion, a pun may add pungency to the sharpest stimulant. Dr. Oliver Wendell Holmes reduced this principle to its cash equivalent when he said that a cheerful smile might be worth $5,000 a year to a physician. Today, psychotherapy, or the healing of bodily disease by mental influence, has the unqualified endorsement of the American Therapeutic Society, the only national organization in America devoted exclusively to therapeutics. It has the enthusiastic support of men of such recognized international leadership in the scientific world and in the medical profession as Freud, Jung, Bleuler, Breuer, Prince, Janet, Babinski, Putnam, Garish, Sedes, Du Bois, Munsterberg, Jones, Brill, Donnelly, Waterman, and Taylor. The present attitude of reputable science toward the principle that the mind controls all bodily operations is, then, one of positive conviction. The world's foremost thinkers accept its truth. The interest of enlightened men and women everywhere is directed toward the mind as a powerful curative force and as a regenerative influence of hitherto undreamed of resource. The more progressive physicians everywhere now admit that there is practically no limit to how far mind can go in the cure of disease. As Dr. Walsh of Fordham University puts it, analysis of the statistics of diseases cured by mental influence shows that its results have been more strikingly manifest in organic than in the so-called nervous or functional diseases. Everyone admits that the mind influences the body somewhat, for everyone has seen others grow pale with fear, or red with anger. Everyone has felt the stopping of the heartbeats at some sudden fright, the quickened breathing and the thumping of the heart caused by excitement. These and 100 other evidences of the influence of mind over matter are common to all of us, and everyone will admit them. But everyone does not know that our whole bodies seem to be nothing more or less than the outward expression of our thought. We sit in a draft, and education teaches us we should have a cold or fever, so we have a cold or fever. We eat something which we have been told is indigestible, and immediately we are assailed with pains. We see another yawn, and our impulse is to follow suit. In the same way, when we hear of sickness round about us, the fear of it visualizes it in our own minds and we, too, have it. The fear of these things seems to bring them about, the mental suggestion sent through to our subconscious minds. We have been educated in a medical age to think that most diseases are infectious or contagious. So the mere sight of a diseased person makes most of us withdraw into ourselves like a turtle within his shell. We fear we shall catch it, when one of the great dangers of disease is that very fear of it. For years it has been accepted as an acknowledged fact that anyone trapped in a mine or other airtight compartment would presently die of carbon dioxide poisoning, lack of oxygen. Now comes Houdini to prove that death for lack of oxygen is not necessary at all. Fear, and not poisoning by carbon dioxide, causes the death of miners and others trapped in airtight compartments, in the opinion of Houdini, according to an Associated Press dispatch of August 6, 1926. Houdini had himself sunk in a sealed coffin in a swimming pool, without chance for a breath of outside air to reach him, and stayed there for an hour and a half, although, according to all previous scientific belief, he should have been dead at the end of 4 minutes. Yet Drive W. J. McConnell of the United States Department of Mines, who examined Houdini before and after the experiment, reported no marked physical reactions from the test, and Houdini himself said he felt only a slight dizziness when he was released from the coffin. "Anyone can do it," said Houdini. "The important thing is, to believe that you are safe." The Chinese have a saying that when the plague comes, 5,000 people may die of the plague, but 50,000 will die of the fear of it. Did you ever hurt a limb, or a finger, so that you thought you couldn't move it? And then, under the stress of some sudden emotion, forget all about the hurt and presently wake to find yourself using the finger or the limb just as readily and as painlessly as though there had never been anything wrong with it. I have before me a clipping from the New York Times of March 29, 1925, telling of a cripple who had been paralyzed for 6 years, but under the spur of sudden fear, he ran up a stairway unaided, without crutch or cane. He had been treated in a number of hospitals, but because of an injury to his spine received in an auto accident, had been unable to walk without crutches or canes for 6 years. The patient in the bed next his own suddenly went crazy and attacked him, and in his fear this paralytic leaped from his bed and ran up a flight of stairs. According to the report, the sudden fright cured him. Take the miracles of Lourdes, or of Saint Anne of Beaupré, or of any of the dozens of shrines that dot the world. What is it that affects the cures? 2 things, desire and faith. "What wouldst thou that I should do unto thee?" the Savior asked the blind man who kept following and crying out to him. "Lord, that I should receive my sight." And again of the cripple at the pool of Bethesda Jesus asked, "Wouldst thou be made whole?" Sounds like foolish questioning, doesn't it? But you remember the story of the famous saint of Italy, who traveled from town to town healing the lame, the halt, and the blind. A pilgrim hastening to a town where the saint was expected, met two lame beggars hurrying away. He asked them the reason for their haste, to be told, to his astonishment, it was because the saint was coming to town. As they put it, he will surely heal us, and where will our livelihood be then? So it is with many people today, not beggars, mind you, but people in every walk of life. They have become so wedded to their ailments, they enjoy poor health so thoroughly, that they are secretly a bit proud of it. Take away their complaints and they would be lost without them. You must have the sincere desire first. That is prayer. Then the faith, the kind of faith that Jesus meant when he said, "Whatsoever ye ask for when ye pray, believe that ye receive it, and ye shall have it." Mind you, not believe ye are going to receive it. Believe that ye receive it, now, this very minute. Know that the real you, the image of you held in universal mind, in short, the truth concerning every organ in your body, is perfect. Know the truth. Believe that you have this perfect image. On the day that you can truly believe this, carry this sincere conviction to your subconscious mind, on that day you will be perfect. This is the faith that Jesus meant when he said, "Thy faith hath made thee whole." This is the faith that is responsible for the miracles of Lord, for miraculous healings everywhere. It matters not whether you be Catholic or Protestant, Jew or Gentile. Desire and faith such as these will heal you. A month or two ago I read in the newspapers of a farmer, blind for 2 years, who went out in the field and prayed that he should receive his sight. At the end of the second day, his sight was completely restored. He was a Protestant. He went to no shrine, just out under the sky and prayed to God. Today I have before me a clipping from the New York Sun of February 23, 1926, telling of Patrolman Dennis O'Brien of the Jersey City Police Force, who at the end of a novena to Our Lady of Help at the Monastery of St. Michael's in Union City, recovered the use of his legs, which had been paralyzed since the time, 2 years before, when a bullet had entered the base of his spine, severing the cord of motor and sensory nerves. He was a Catholic. Then here is one from the New York Sun of June 26, 1926, telling how Miss Elsie Meyer of the Bronx, New York, was healed overnight of a tumorous growth that had troubled her for months. "I realized last fall that there was an unusual growth on my body," she said. "It might have resulted from the strain of lifting a trunk. I wanted to know what it was, and I first went to a doctor, who informed me it was a tumorous growth and likely to become serious. But I would not be frightened and refused to receive any medical remedies in the way of cure. I have been a believer in faith healing and member of the Unity Society, a branch of the New Thought organization, for a number of years, so I went to a New Thought practitioner. While this seemed to help me, the tumorous growth remained. I guess my faith wasn't strong enough at the time. That was last fall. I came to the Congress with the same growth, apparently unaffected by any attempts to cure it. But after attending the healing meeting at the Congress yesterday, I left with firm faith that I would get the healing I had asked for. When I retired, I noticed the tumor was still on my body, but when I awoke this morning it had disappeared. The chronicles of every religion are full of just such miracles. And the reason for them is the same in every case: prayer and faith. Given these, no healing is impossible. Suppose we go back for a moment to the lowly amoeba, the first bit of animal life upon the earth. I know not whether you are fundamentalist or evolutionist. The facts are a bit harder to prove from the evolution side of it, so let us argue from that angle. The amoeba, as you will recall from Chapter 1, is the lowest form of animal life known to scientists, a sort of jellyfish with but a single cell, without brains, without intelligence, possessing only life. No one would ever contend that this jellyfish could improve itself. No one would argue that it developed the next form of life out of its own mind or ideas. Yet, according to science, the next form of life did develop from this jelly-like mass. The amoeba certainly was not responsible for doing it. And it couldn't develop itself. So the conclusion is forced upon us that some outside intelligence must have done it. But there were no other living creatures. The amoeba was alone of all animal life upon the planet. The condition of the water and atmosphere was such that few if any other forms of animals could have sustained life at that time. So the intelligence which developed the next form of animal life must have been the same that created the amoeba, that first brought life to this planet. That intelligence is variously called God, providence, nature, the life principle, mind, etc. For our purposes here, let us call it universal mind. Having formed life here on Earth, universal mind proceeded to develop it. Starting with a single cell, it built tel upon tel, changing each form of life to meet the different conditions of atmosphere and environment that the cooling of the Earth crust brought about. When the multicellular structure became complicated, it gave a brain to it to direct the different functions, just as you put a governor on a steam engine. When land appeared and the receding tides left certain animals high and dry for periods of hours, it gave these both lungs and gills, the one for the air, the other for the water. When the creatures began to prey upon one another, it gave one speed, another a shell, a third an ink-like fluid, that each in its own way might escape and survive. But always it progressed. Each new stage of life was an improvement over the previous one. And always it showed its resourcefulness, its ability to meet any need. Finally, as the culmination of all its efforts, it made man, a creature endowed not only with a brain like that of the lower animals, but with the power of reason, made in his image and likeness, sharing infinite intelligence, himself a creator and a part of universal mind. All through the creation, from the time of the one-celled amoeba right up to men, every scientist will admit that the directing intelligence of universal mind was on the job every minute, that it formed the models on which each new and different kind of animal was made, that each of these models was perfect, the one model best fitted to cope with the conditions it had to confront. Certainly when it came to men, it is not likely to have been any less successful in forming a perfect model than it was in making the tiger or the elephant. So we can take it, I assume, that all will admit that man as formed by universal mind is perfect, that the idea of man as it exists in universal mind is perfect in every particular. And universal mind, from the very beginning, has never taken a step backward, has never stood still. Always it has progressed. So it would seem safe to assume that man is not going backward now, that he is a more perfect creature than he was 5,000, 10,000, or 100,000 years ago, that he is constantly drawing nearer and nearer the likeness of his creator. The next step seems just as logical. If there was inherent in even the earliest and lowest forms of life the power to develop whatever means was requisite to meet each new emergency, such as a shell or lungs or legs or wings, if this power is still inherent in the lower forms of life such as the plant parasites referred to in a previous chapter, does it not seem a certainty that we have the same power within ourselves, if only we knew how to call it forth? Jesus proved that we have, and his disciples and followers added still further proof. After the 3rd century of the Christian era, that power was allowed to lapse through disuse, but of late years thousands have been taking advantage of it for themselves and for others through psychology or religion. A new church has been founded upon the words of James, faith without works is dead. It differs from most churches in that it teaches that Jesus meant all that he said when he commanded his disciples to go, preach, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out devils, freely ye have received, freely give. The sick, the lame, the halt and the blind have flocked to it literally by the 100,000s. That thousands have been cured is beyond dispute. That many were cases which had been given up by the medical fraternity, the doctors quite frankly admit. And the basis of all their cures is that there is nothing miraculous about the cure of disease at all. That it is divinely natural. That it requires merely understanding. That mind is the only creator. And that the only image universal mind holds of your body is a perfect image, neither young nor old, but full of health, of vigor, of beauty, and vitality. That all you have to do when assailed by disease is to go back to universal mind for a new conception of its perfect image, for the truth concerning your body. Just as you would go back to the principle of mathematics for the truth concerning any problem that worked out incorrectly. When you can make your subconscious mind copy after this universal image, the truth, instead of the diseased image you are holding in your thoughts, your sickness will vanish like the mere dream it is. Does that sound too deep? Then look at it this way. When you think an organ is diseased, it is your conscious mind that thinks this. Inevitably it sends this thought through to your subconscious mind, and the latter proceeds to build the cells of that organ along this imperfect, diseased model. Change the model, in other words, change your belief, and your subconscious mind will go back again to building along right lines. Your body, you know, is simply an aggregation of millions upon millions of protons and electrons, held together by mind. They are the universal substance all about us, the plastic lay from which the sculptor mind shapes the forms you see. To quote the New York Sun, man's body is made up of trillions of miniature solar systems, each with whirling planets and a central sun. These tiny systems are the atoms of modern science. The atoms of all elements are made up of protons and electrons in varying quantities and arranged in various ways. But what are protons and electrons? The masters of physics have succeeded in weighing and measuring them. We know that they carry the smallest possible charges of electricity, and we are learning much about the way they behave, but students are beginning to doubt that they have real substance, that they are anything one could hit with a Lilliputian hammer. Dr. H. G. Gale of the University of Chicago, addressing the Ohio Academy of Science the other day, said there was good reason to believe that electrons were composed entirely of electricity and that their mass or weight was only a manifestation of electrical force. According to this view, nothing exists in the universe except electricity, and perhaps ether. Your subconscious mind partakes of the creative power of mind, and because of that, it is daily, hourly, changing the particles of electrical energy which constitute your body to conform to the image you hold before it. The clay cannot reply to the sculptor. No more can these tiny particles of electricity. Your body has nothing to say as to whether it shall be diseased or crippled. It is mind that decides this. Jesus understood this, and it was on the basis of this understanding that he was able to cure any and all manner of disease. He was not a magician or occult wonder worker, aiming to set aside the laws of nature. He was a teacher, demonstrating those laws. He didn't pick the learned scribes and Pharisees and let them in on the secret of his wonder working. On the contrary, the men he chose were simple fisher folk, and to them he gave the understanding that enabled them, too, to cure the sick, the halt and the blind. For what is sickness? An illusion, a mortal dream, merely the absence of health. Bring back that health image, and the sickness immediately disappears. Universal mind never created disease. The only image it knows of men is the truth, the perfect image. The only idea it has of your body is a perfect, healthy idea. For God is of purer eyes than to behold evil. Then where does disease come from? Who created it? No one did. It is a mere illusion, just as, if you think a pin is sticking you, and you concentrate your thought on the pain, it becomes unbearable. Yet when you investigate, you find that no pin was sticking you at all, merely a hair, or bit of cinder lodged against the skin. How often have you had some fancied pain, only to have it promptly disappear when your physician assured you there was nothing wrong with you at all? It would be the same way with all sickness, all pain, if you would understand that it is merely fear or suggestion working on your conscious mind, and that if you will deny this belief of pain or sickness, your subconscious mind will speedily make that denial good. Don't render that mind impotent by thoughts of fear, doubt, and anxiety. If you do, it is going to get like a working crew which is constantly being stopped by strikes or walkouts or changes of plans. It will presently get discouraged and stop trying. To quote Dr. G.O.E. Pitzer again, in proper, healthy, or normal conditions of life, the objective mind and the subjective mind act in perfect harmony with each other. When this is the case, healthy and happy conditions always prevail. But these two minds are not always permitted to act in perfect harmony with each other. This brings mental disturbances, excites physical wrongs, functional and organic diseases. Our unconscious is a tremendous storage plant full of potential energy which can be expended for beneficial or harmful ends. Like every apparatus for storing up power, it can be man's most precious ally, if man is familiar with it and, hence, not afraid of it. Ignorance and fear, on the other hand, can transform a live electric wire into an engine of destruction and death. Even as long ago as Napoleon's day, men had begun to get an inkling of this. Think that you are well, said the astute Talleyrand, instead of thinking that you are sick. And the formula of the Quakers is that an energetic soul is master of the body which it loves. So keep in mind the one basic fact that covers the whole ground, that mind is all. There is no other cause. When you drive the belief in disease from your subconscious mind, you will drive away the pain and all the other symptoms with it. Few sick people have any idea how much they can do for themselves. There is an old saying that every man is a fool or his own physician at 40. When the science of mind is more generally understood, that saying will become literally true. Every man will find within himself the mind which healeth all thy diseases. For every function of your body is governed by your mind. When sickness or pain assails you, deny it. Cling steadfastly to the one idea that covers all, that universal mind made your every organ perfect, that the only image of each organ now in universal mind is this perfect image, and that this perfect idea is endowed with resources sufficient to meet any need. Jesus' command, "Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect," was meant to be taken literally. And it can be followed literally if we will model our bodies upon the image He holds of us in universal mind. We are all sculptors, you know, but instead of marble or clay, our material is the plastic energy, protons and electrons, of which we and everything in this world about us are made. What are you making of it? What image are you holding in mind? Images of sickness, of poverty, of limitation. Then you are reproducing these in your life. Banish them. Forget them. Never let them enter your thought, and they will never again manifest themselves in your life. You admit that mind influences your body to some extent, but you think your physical organs hold the preponderance of power. So you depend upon them, and make yourself their slave. Know ye not, says Paul, that to whom ye yield yourselves servants to obey, his servants ye are to whom ye obey. By holding before yourself the thought that your organs are the master, you make them your master, and deprive yourself of the directing intelligence of your subconscious mind. When an organ ceases to function properly, you try to doctor it, when the part that needs attention is your mind. If you are running an electric machine, and the current becomes weak or is switched off, you don't take the machine part, or oil it or tamper with it to make it run better. You go to the source of the power to find what is wrong there. In the same way, when anything seems wrong with the functioning of your body, the place to investigate is your subconscious mind. Your stomach has no intelligence, nor your heart, nor any other of your organs. Your liver, for instance, could never figure out how much sugar should be turned into your blood every minute to keep your bodily temperature at 98 degrees, when you are sitting in a room that is warm to only 65 degrees. It doesn't know how much more sugar is required to keep the temperature normal when you go out into a driving gale 10 below zero. Yet it supplies the requisite amount, neither too much nor too little. And it does it instantaneously. Where does it get the information? You don't know it. No mortal man could figure it out in a year's time. It gets it from your subconscious mind. It gets both the information and the directions to use it. And every other of your bodily organs gets its information in the same place. Your muscles are not self-acting. Take away mind and those muscles are just like any other bit of matter, lifeless, inert. They have nothing to say as to what they shall do. They merely obey the behests of mind. Have you ever seen one of those great presses at work in a newspaper plant? They seem almost human in their intelligence. At one end, great rolls of paper feed in. At the other, out comes the finished newspaper, folded, ready for delivery. Everything is automatic. Everything as perfect as machinery can be made. The fingers that fold the paper seem almost lifelike in their deftness. But shut off the life-giving electric current, and what happens? The machinery is powerless. Take away the directing human intelligence, and how long before that wonderful machine would be a mass of scrap, mere bits of steel and rubber? How long could it function of itself? So it is with your body. A wonderful mechanism, the most complicated, yet the most perfect in the world. But switch off the current of your mental dynamo, take away the intelligence that directs the working of your every organ, and what is left? A bit of bone and flesh, inert and useless. In the final analysis, your body is merely a piece of mechanism, dependent entirely upon mind. It has no power, no volition, of its own. It does as mind tells it to, insofar as mind believes itself to be the master. Your eyes, for instance, are merely lenses which transmit light from the outer world to the brain within. They contract or elongate, they open or close, just as mind directs. And mind, in its turn, keeps them constantly nourished with new, life-giving blood, replacing old tissue, old cells, as fast as they wear out, rebuilding ever, so that your eyes may continue to function perfectly as long as your conscious mind is dependent upon them for its impressions of outer objects. It doesn't matter how old you may be or how much you use them. Your eyes are like any other muscles of your body, they improve in strength with use. Give them but enough rest intervals for mind to repair and rebuild the used tissue. Keep before your subconscious mind the perfect image of eyes on which you expect it to rebuild, and you need never fear glasses, you need never worry about your eyes going back on you. What is it happens when your muscles refuse to work, fail to perform their functions properly? You are what has happened. You have switched off the current from some particular part. You have been holding the belief so long and so firmly that the muscles have the preponderance of power, that your subconscious mind has come to believe it, too. And when the nerve or muscle suffers an injury, the subconscious mind, at the suggestion of your conscious mind, gives up all dominion over it. All disease, all sickness, all imperfections of the human body are due to this one cause, your belief that your body is the master, that it can act, that it can catch cold, or become diseased, without the consent of mind. This is the procuring cause of all suffering. One disease is no different from another in this. They are all due to that one erroneous belief. If you will deny the power of your body over your mind, you can destroy all fear of disease. And when the fear goes, the foundation of the disease is gone. The way to begin is to refuse to believe or to heed any complaint from your body. Have no fear of climate or atmosphere, of dampness or drafts. It is only when you believe them unhealthy that they are so to you. When your stomach sends a report of distress, when it tells you that something you have eaten is disagreeing with it, treat it as you would an unruly servant. Remind it that it is not the judge of what is or is not good for it. That it has no intelligence. That it is merely a channel through which the food you give it passes for certain treatment and selection. That if the food is not good it has but to pass it through to the eliminatory organs as speedily as may be. Your stomach is entirely capable of doing this. Every organ you have is capable of withstanding any condition, given the right state of mind to direct it. The only reason that they succumb to sickness or disease or injury is because you tell them to. Men have fallen from great heights without injury. Men have taken the most deadly poison without harm. Men have gone through fire and flood and pestilence with not a scratch to show. And what men have done once they can do again. The fact that it has been done shows that your body does not need to suffer injury from these conditions. And if it does not need to, then it would seem that the only reason it ordinarily suffers is because your fear of injury is the thought you are holding before your subconscious mind, and therefore that is the thought that it images on your body. In a dispatch from Stockholm to the New York Herald Tribune, dated January 18, 1926, I read that Dr. Henry Marcus and Dr. Ernest Sahlgren, Stockholm scientists, have been able, through hypnotic suggestion, to offset the effect of poisons on the human system to a marked degree. The scientists put 3 subjects into hypnotic sleep and then administered drugs, carefully recording the effects on blood pressure and pulse, both with and without suggestion. When a drug which acts to increase blood pressure was administered without suggestion, the blood pressure readings ranged between 109 to 130 and pulse readings from 54 to 100. But when the drug was administered with the suggestion to the mind of the patient that it was merely so much harmless water, the blood pressures were from 107 to 116 and pulse readings all less than 67. From which one would judge that it was the patient's belief which affected him, far more than any power in the drug. Bear this in mind when anyone tells you that certain foods are not good for you. You can eat what you like, if you do it in moderation. Just remember, no matter what you may eat, if you relish it, if you believe it to be good for you, it will be good for you. But, you may say, is not this like the tenets of a well-known religion? What of that? If certain fundamental truths have been uncovered by another, why not use them, regardless of whether or not we agree with the philosophy from which they are taken? To quote again from Dr. Richard C. Cabot of the Harvard Medical School, there need be no conflict. There is opportunity for all sincere, humble-minded effort. Let us have no persecutions and no interference with the spread of truth and light from any source. Indictments against movements as powerful and sincere as Christian Science and preventive medicine are anachronistic. Let us all get busy along our own lines. With malice towards none, with charity for all, let us bind up the nation's wounds. It has often seemed to me that if all the churches would take a leaf out of the book of ordinary business practice, forget their differences over dogma, and simply profit by the example that Mary Baker Eddy, discoverer and founder of Christian Science, has given them of building up an enormous following almost overnight, they would be much the better off thereby. For what was it brought men and women into the church in such vast numbers in the early day of Christianity? Healing. What was responsible for the phenomenal growth of the Christian Science church? The healing of thousands of people of any and every kind of ill. What is it that people go to any church for? To pray, and to find how to get an answer to their prayers. Show them the way to do this, show them the way to heal themselves of all their ills and lacks, and you will need to worry no more about the crowded theaters and the empty churches. If this be treason, make the most of it. The moment any symptom of illness shows in your body, vigorously deny its existence. Say to yourself, my body has no intelligence. Neither has any germ of disease. Therefore neither my body nor the disease can tell me I am sick. Mind is the only cause. And mind has not directed them to make me sick. The only image of my body that mind knows is a perfect, vigorous, healthy image. And that is the only image I am going to build on. Then forget the image of disease. It is only an illusion, and can be dispelled like any other illusion. Keep in your mind's eye the image of perfect health, of vigorous, boundless vitality. Your body cannot say it is sick. Therefore, when the belief of sickness assails you, it must come either from your conscious mind or from outside suggestion. In either event, it is your job to see that no belief of sickness reaches your subconscious mind, that no fear of it, no thought of it, is imaged there. To treat one who has already succumbed to the belief of sickness, explain to him, as I have explained to you here, that his body has no power for sickness or for health, any more than a log of wood has. That his body is merely an aggregation of millions of electrons, particles of electrical energy, really, subject wholly to his mind. That these particles of energy have neither substance nor intelligence, that they are constantly changing, and that the forms they take depend entirely upon the images he holds in his own mind. His body is, in short, a mental concept. It is an exact reflection of the thought he is holding in mind of it. If has been sick, it is because he has been holding sickly, weak and unhealthy thoughts in his mind. If he wishes to get well, it is first necessary for him to change his thought. Instead of doctoring the machine, he is to go direct to the powerhouse and change the current. Let him repeat to himself, night and morning, this little formula. There is no permanence to matter. The one surest thing about it is change. Every cell, every tissue in my body is constantly being renewed. The old, worn-out tissues are being torn down and carried away. New, perfect ones are replacing them. And the model on which those new organisms are being rebuilt is the perfect model that is held in divine mind. For God made men in his image. That image was perfect then, is perfect now. It is the only image that divine mind knows of me. It is the only image on which my subconscious mind is ever again going to pattern its rebuilding. Every minute of every day I am growing more and more into the image of God, the true likeness he holds of me in his thought. If he will do that, if he will bear in mind that matter as such has no feeling, no intelligence, that it is the mind that feels, the mind that directs, and therefore he has nothing to fear from any external causes, his fear of the disease will vanish. And the patient does not exist who will not speedily recover when his fear of the disease is gone. Verily, verily, I say unto you, said Jesus, if a man keep my saying, he shall never see death. And again, this is the life eternal. Is, you will notice, not shall be. The mind is God's way of utilizing his energy, says the Reverend William T. Walsh, rector of St. Luke's Church, New York City, in his book, Scientific Spiritual Healing. God evolved the subconscious mind. It is his gift to us like all else that we possess, and because it is from him we should give thanks and learn to use it intelligently. God has so fashioned us that we do not have to give conscious attention to the vital processes. He has given us what is called the subconscious mind, which looks after all the vital functions. This mind can receive commands from us and has wonderful ability to carry them out, for it is a law that every thought tends to realize itself subconsciously in the body. If you allow evil thoughts to remain, they are received by the subconscious, which tends to realize them in the body just as much as though they were good, wholesome, health-giving spiritual thoughts. For remember, the subconscious does not reason and judge. It only receives and obeys. When you have an accident, don't immediately think that you must be hurt. On the contrary, deny at once that you can be hurt. The denial will take away the creative power of your thought from any damaging condition. More than that, if you will immediately call to mind the fact that the only image of your body that universal mind holds is a perfect image, and that this is the image on which your subconscious mind is building, you will find that this subconscious mind will speedily rebuild any damaged parts in accordance with that image. As a matter of fact, if we could thoroughly realize that our bodies are made up merely of vortices of energy subject wholly to the control of mind, it should hurt us no more to run a knife through them than it does to run it through water. The water immediately resumes the shape of the vessel that holds it. Just so, our bodies should immediately resume the shape that mind holds them in. But even with our present imperfect understanding, we can perform what the uninitiated would call miracles with our bodies. And each victory we win gives us a bit more of power over them. To conquer one diseased condition makes it easier to ward off or to conquer other diseased conditions. The body cannot oppose us. It is only the bias of education and the suggestions of those about us that we have to combat. There is no necessity for disease. There is no necessity even for fatigue. They that wait upon the Lord shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. Those words from Holy Writ were meant literally, and they can be applied literally if you will govern your body by mind, and not let custom and popular belief make your body the master. Whatever it is right for you to do, you can do without fear, no matter if it entails long-continued toil, hardship, or danger. Depend upon it, your mind can call to your aid all the forces of nature if they are necessary to your emergency. Therefore I say unto you, quoth the Master, take no thought for your life, what ye shall eat, or what ye shall drink, nor yet for your body, what ye shall put on. Is not the life more than meat and the body than raiment? Diet, exercise, and rules of health never kept any one well of themselves. Often they attract the mind to the subject of sickness and thereby foster it. Dieting is good insofar as it prevents gluttony. Temperance is just as important in eating as in the drinking of alcoholic liquor. But you can eat in moderation anything you like, anything that you relish and believe to be good for you, without fear of its disagreeing with you. Reasonable exercise, too, is fine for both the body and the mind. Provided you do not make a fetish of it. It isn't the exercise that keeps you well, it is the mental image you hold in your thought. The exercise merely helps to impress that mental image on your subconscious mind. Electrical treatments, skin tonics, alcohol rubs, etc., all are useful only to the extent that they center the attention of the subconscious mind upon the parts affected. Exactly the same results, even to that pleasant little tingling of the skin, can be effected by mind alone. I remember reading an article by Mrs. Vance Cheney, telling how she cured herself of paralysis of the legs in just that way. After lying for months under the care of doctors and masseurs, she tired of them and decided to depend entirely upon mind. So, several times a day, she would utterly relax in every nerve and muscle, then consciously send her thought down along the nerves of her legs to her feet. Presently there would be that little tingling sensation in her feet, evidence of increased circulation, followed after a time by a feeling of drowsiness. A few weeks of these treatments completely restored the use of her legs. The same effort can be made to throw off any physical trouble. Put your hand upon the part affected. Try to visualize that organ as it should be. See it functioning perfectly. Believe that it is working normally again. Your thought brings the blood to the affected part, clears up the trouble, provides new cells, new tissue, while your belief that the organ is functioning properly will bring about that normal condition. This is a treatment, however, that must be used with discretion, for to consciously interfere in the regular functioning of the body without any real need for such interference results in confusion rather than help. It is like going down a flight of stairs rapidly. Pay no attention to the movement of your feet, and they flit over the steps with never a sign of hesitancy or faltering. But try to watch them step by step, and you will either have to slow up or you will presently miss a step, stumble or fall. The centipede was happy quite, until the toad, for fun, said, "Pray, which leg goes after which?" This stirred his mind to such a pitch, he lay distracted in a ditch, considering how to run. There is one rule that will help anyone keep healthy. That rule is to forget your nerves, throw away your pills and your medicine bottles, and hold before your mind's eye only the perfect image that universal mind has of your body. That is the surest way to keep free from sickness. And if you are already sick, the same rule applies. Know that universal mind never created disease, that it is but an illusion of your conscious mind. Know that mind is the only creator, that as Shakespeare puts it, there is nothing, either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Know that you have the say as to what that thinking shall be. Know, therefore, that by holding a perfect image of your body in your thoughts you can make your body perfect. Have you ever cut your finger? Who was it coagulated the blood, stopped the gash, wove new skin? Who was it called upon the little phagocytes to come and kill the septic germs? Not your conscious mind, certainly. Most people don't even know there are any such animals. Their conscious minds don't know the first thing about healing. Whence comes the information? Whence the directing genius? Where but from the same intelligence that keeps your heart and lungs on the job while you sleep, that regulates your liver and your kidneys, that attends to all the functions of your body. That intelligence is your subconscious mind. With the proper cooperation on your part, your subconscious mind will attend to these duties indefinitely, keeping your every organ perfect, your every function regular as clockwork. But it is exceedingly amenable to suggestion. Worry about sickness or contagion, hold before it the thought that you are getting old, or that some organ is becoming feeble, and it will be perfectly agreeable to bringing about the condition you suggest. Convince it that there is no danger from contagion, hold before it the thought of health and strength, and it will be just as prompt in manifesting them. So what you must realize is this: before anything can be made, there must be a model for it in mind. Before a house can be built, there must be a plan, a blueprint from which to build. Before you were created, universal mind held in thought the model on which you were made. That model was perfect then, is perfect now. The only idea of you that universal mind knows is a perfect model, where every cell and organism is formed along perfect lines. True, many of us have built up imperfect models in our own thoughts, but we can get rid of them just as rapidly as we get rid of the fear of them. Your body is changing every moment. Every cell, every organism, is constantly being rebuilt. Why rebuild along the old, imperfect lines? Why not build on the lines held in the thought of universal mind? You can do it. But the essence of it lies in the words of the Master: whatsoever things ye desire when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them. It matters not what your ailment may be. It will respond to that treatment. Suppose, as an example, that your stomach has been troubling you, that you cannot eat what you would like, that you cannot assimilate your food, that you are weak and nervous as consequence. Every morning when you awake, and every night just before you drop off to sleep, say to yourself, "My stomach has neither intelligence nor feeling. It functions only as mind directs it. Therefore I need have no worry about its being weak or diseased, for the only image that mind knows of stomach is its perfect image. And that perfect image can assimilate or remove anything I may put into it. It is perfect, as everything that universal mind makes is perfect. And being perfect, it can do anything right I may ask of it without fear or anxiety." Concentrate on the one organ at a time, and repeat this formula to yourself night and morning. Say it, feel it, believe it, and you can do what you please with that organ. As thy faith is, so be it done unto thee. Suffer little children to come unto me. I can believe all you say about my fears and worries being responsible for my own illnesses, write many people, but how about infants and little children? They have no fear. Why do they sicken and die? What many people do not understand is that the subconscious mind is just as amenable to suggestion from those round about you as it is from your own conscious mind. Otherwise you would be in no danger from anything you did not consciously know of. And the more ignorant you were, the safer you would be. Suppose, for instance, you took a draught of what you believed to be pure bootleg whiskey, but which in reality was no more than wood alcohol. Many others have done it. Your conscious mind would expect no harm from it, any more than did theirs. You would have no fear of the result. No more did they. So, you would say, you should experience no harm. Yet you would probably die, or at least go blind, as have these others. Why? Because your subconscious mind would know the wood alcohol for what it is. Your own conscious belief, and the preponderance of opinion of those about you, have instilled the conviction in your subconscious mind that wood alcohol is dire poison. Therefore, when you pour this poison into your system, even though you do not consciously recognize it as such, your subconscious mind proceeds to bring about the effects you would logically expect such a poison to produce. It is the same with contagion, with the hundreds of diseases which most people scarcely know the names of, but to which they are constantly falling victims. They don't know they have been exposed to contagion. They don't know that their systems are in such condition that certain diseases logically follow. But their subconscious minds do know it. And they have so thoroughly educated those minds to believe in the necessity for ill health, in the inevitability of sickness under certain conditions, that the subconscious proceeds to work out the contagion or the condition to its logical conclusion. Grown people can change these subconscious convictions by the proper counter-suggestions, consciously given. But young children cannot reason. They accept the beliefs that are held by the generality of mankind, or that are strongly suggested to them by those nearest to them. That is why babies and young children fall such easy victims to the fears of disease and contagion of their parents and those about them. That is why worry over a seeming epidemic so often results in the children catching it, even when they have apparently been in no way exposed to the contagion. Man, says a famous writer, often has fear stamped upon him before his entrance into the outer world. He is reared in fear, all his life is passed in bondage of fear of disease and death, and thus his whole mentality becomes cramped, limited, and depressed, and his body follows its shrunken pattern and specification. Is it not surprising that health exists at all? Nothing but the boundless divine love, exuberance, and vitality, constantly poured in, even though unconsciously to us, could in some degrees neutralize such an ocean of morbidity. But the remedy is just as simple. Know that your children are primarily children of God. That the image He holds of them is perfect. And that His perfect image has within itself every power necessary to ward off disease of any kind. Put your children actively under His care. Throw the responsibility upon Him. Depend upon it, when you do this in the right way, no harm can come near them. Whenever fear assails you, whenever your children are exposed to danger or contagion, realize that He shall give His angels, His thoughts, charge over them, to lead them in all their ways. If your children are sick or ailing, read these thoughts aloud to them just as though you were talking to a grown person. Only address yourself to their subconscious minds. Read over the past few pages. Repeat to them the little formula outlined above, adapting it to their own particular need. Above all, believe it. Your faith will work just as great wonders for your children as for yourself. Never doubt. Never fear. Go at your problem just as you would approach a difficult problem in mathematics. In mathematics, you know that the problem does not exist for which you cannot find the solution, provided you follow the rules and work in the right way. As long as you do your part, the principle of mathematics will do the rest. It is the same in all of life. Don't worry. Don't fret. Go at your problem in the right way, no matter how difficult it may seem, follow the rules herein laid down, and you can confidently look to the principle of being to bring you the answer. L'Envoi. The kingdom of heaven is like unto a treasure hid in a field, the which when a man hath found, he hideth, and for joy thereof goeth and selleth all that he hath, and buyeth that field. This field is your own consciousness, a treasure you find within yourself, which others cannot see. But you know it for the indwelling Spirit, the Father within you, and are willing to sell all that you have because this treasure is worth more than all other possessions. If you have begun to realize this treasure, and use it even in a small way, the most wonderful thing that can happen to anyone on this planet has happened to you. What does it mean? It means that an ordinary human being, afflicted with all the sufferings and fears and worries and superstitions of the average man, has learned the law of being. It means that he has acquired a power above all that of his would-be destroyers. It means that he has put his foot upon the rock of life, that the doorway of heaven is open before him, that all of good is as free to him as the air he breathes. There hath not failed one word of all his good promises. And we declare unto you glad tidings, how that the promise which was made unto the fathers, God hath fulfilled the same unto us. Surely we have every reason to be grateful for all the good round about us. Surely we should be thankful for the infinite power that has been given to us. And being truly grateful, by the way, is the surest evidence of real faith that there is. Faith, you know, is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Remember, when Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, how he first prayed, then thanked the Father for answering his prayer. There was not yet any material evidence that the prayer had been answered. But Jesus had perfect faith in the Father. And it was justified. Immediately he had given thanks, Lazarus came forth from the tomb. The world today is so much more wonderful than it was to former generations. Mankind has begun to glimpse its illimitable powers. The whole world is plastic and sensitive to new ideas. The soul of man is finding itself, and learning its relation to the infinite. The veil between the visible and the invisible is being drawn aside. Through seeing the Father do the works, we are becoming more assured of our own power, beginning to assert the Father that is within us. We know that, given the right understanding, the works that Jesus did we can do also. We recognize his miracles as divinely natural laws, part of God's continuous plan. So let us go with him unto the mount of vision, taking as our motto his words, see that thou make all things according to the pattern shewed thee in the mount. The end.